Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I am happy that you guys can be here with me for another episode. What are we on? 258. We have been in this sacred place 258 times. And wherever you are, back in the States, somewhere across the world, you have my appreciation for being here. By the way, if you guys dig this content, hit the like, share. You don't have to do it at this very moment. It's presumptive of me to put it out there like this. But if you find yourself over the course of the show saying, you know, I really like this show, hit the like button. It helps with the, algorithm, the god of the algorithm. There's been right much news that has taken place over the last few days. I'm sorry. Let me repeat that. That has taken place over the last day. There's been more information on tomahawks. There's that. Apparently, Trump ended up calling Putin. And in the context of that conversation, I strongly suspect it was explained to Trump the consequences of the tomahawks. In fact, this is Donald Trump's reporting of this. And just so you would see how Donald Trump explained the phone call that took place. The phone call was apparently 2.5 hours. And after the phone call, they apparently decided to meet in Budapest. The underlings are making it work up until the point for that meeting, and Orban seems happy as a lark that they will be meeting in his city to have further discussions. This is Donald Trump talking about the phone call. There are two of these videos that I want to show. This is the first.
Hey, would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand tomahawks to your opposition? He didn't like the idea. He really didn't like the idea. No, I said it that way. You have to be a little bit lighthearted sometimes, but no, he doesn't want tomahawk. Tomahawk is a vicious weapon. It's a vicious, offensive, incredibly destructive weapon. Nobody wants tomahawk shot at them.
Typically ask you not to provide tomahawks.
So
now, the reporter says, hey, did Putin ask you not to supply tomahawks?
I did ask.
This is another part of that video.
It didn't say much, but I do say to you, you didn't. We talked about it a little bit. Didn't say much, but I do say to you, you know, we need tomahawks for the United States of America too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. I mean, we can't deplete for our country. So you know, they're very vital. They're very powerful. They're very accurate. They're very good, but we need them too. We talked about it a little bit. Didn't say much, but I do say to you, you know, we need tomahawks for the United States of America too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. I mean, we can't deplete for our country. So
one more video on this that I want to show before giving any kind of commentary on it. This is Trump responding to the reporter asking, hey, did Putin ask you, you know, not to send tomahawks?
Would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand?
Putin tried to dissuade you from selling tomahawk missiles.
Well, of course. What do you think he's going to say? Please sell tomahawks? Is he going to say, please sell those tomahawks? I really appreciate it. I did actually say, would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand tomahawks to your opposition? I did say that to him. I said it just that way. He didn't like the idea. He really didn't like the idea. No, I said it that way. You have to be a little bit lighthearted sometimes, but no, he doesn't want tomahawk. Tomahawk is a vicious weapon.
All right, and that leads into the part that we heard the first time around. I have to be very honest with you. I don't even know if those tomahawks are already there or if there's still plans on sending those tomahawks. I break this down into maybe 3 different compartments. One, Donald Trump understood the gravity of sending those tomahawks, meaning He had that conversation. Putin explained to him the gravity and the consequences of sending those tomahawks, and Trump backed away from it. There's that. 2, or this is kind of like the bone-crushing sanctions, if you remember, where Donald Trump was like, I'm going to pass bone-crushing sanctions, and I'm going to go after India, and I'm going to go after all of these places, and I need Europe to pass all of these sanctions. And then out of the blue, well, we're going to have the Alaska summit, so we don't have to do that anymore. Meaning coming up with a summit in order to create a dodge, so he wouldn't necessarily have to do something that he knew were going to have negative consequences on the United States. There's that. The problem with all of this, from the Russian perspective, is that it gives this impression that Putin was pulled to a meeting because Putin was scared of tomahawks. And I guarantee you that is going to be the way it's reported. Vladimir Putin was scared of the tomahawks, and so he was once again willing to negotiate. When the reality of it is, Russia's always been open and willing to negotiate. But the issue is the perception. And I know that some people don't think the perception matters. I'm one of those people that think the perception does matter. My guest is here. Let me hit my guest. We can talk about this later in the show. But who the hell knows what's going on? But apparently they're having a meeting in Budapest. That's the part that we know. We are joined with the man himself, Laith Marouf. How you doing, Laith? You doing okay today?
Doing great. Thank you very much.
Good. Laith is award-winning multimedia producer. I'm sorry. He is an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant. You can find him on Free Palestine TV or freepalestine.video. Freepalestine.tv is on, I'm sorry, Free Palestine TV is on Twitter. Freepalestine.video is on the web that you guys can hit. Laith has fantastic videos. Definitely check him out. Anything concerning with the Middle East, his pulse, his fingers on the pulse. So, fantastic work, Laith. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
I saw something that was rather remarkable that you told me was taking place maybe a month or so ago, meaning this has been going on for a while. And I don't know if the public is entirely aware that this is taking place in Lebanon. Take a look at this. This is not a meteor strike. This is not a sunrise. No, the reason there's the delay is because what you're saying is the difference between the speed of light versus the speed of sound. At least that's my assumption. All right. Now you look at that and you think to yourself, okay, what is Israel attacking with that ferocity? What on earth could they be going after with that level of ferocity? What they went after was asphalt and concrete plant in Lebanon. This. And you think to yourself, why would they need to go after a concrete plant like this? You've explained to me once before why. Go into this for us. Explain this to the audience, that they're effectively going after tractors, building supplies, anything that can be allowed to rebuild, that they've effectively have a military policy campaign in destroying those items. Last night was another example of that situation. Break that down for us. Why are they doing this?
I'm kind of happy that you brought this up because I actually just came back from the site that you just showed.
Really?
And I just stopped at a hotel on the way to be able to make this call because I wasn't going to make it back to Beirut on time for, to film this from the studio with you. So it's a quarry for rocks, and there's 4 companies in this quarry. One of them making cement, the other doing asphalt and tar. Another company that is making metal bars for the fortified cement. And so it's a huge complex on the side of the town of Ansar, on the way to Nabatea. And I, was there for an hour filming, and I didn't finish going through the whole location. It is a large, complex industrial area, and just one of the companies, I was talking to the manager, had lost, a couple of $100 million because the machinery that is there, whether it's the grinding machines that grind the rocks and make them into gravel and then into cement, and or the the cement rollers that transport the cement to the sites where it's going to be used. All of this is huge destruction. And over the last 9 months since the quote-unquote ceasefire, we saw the Zionists in the beginning target reconstruction heavy machinery in the frontline villages when they arrive and when they're lifting the rubble. We saw them target also civilians when they go back to their homes and begin reconstruction. That was the first stage. Then we saw a second stage of targeting architects and surveyors, civilian architects that are going down to survey the damages and or lay out plans for reconstruction. And then the stage just before this one was targeting the dealerships and distribution points of heavy machinery. There was 3 different ones that were targeted over the last few months, and the last one that was last week. We did a report on Free Palestine TV that people can see there, where that one single dealership of heavy machinery lost almost $500 million in machines. And so today is the latest stage in targeting all nodes of the reconstruction efforts in South Lebanon, and that is the companies that produce cement, asphalt, and all the required materials for reconstruction. So this was huge. As you saw there, there's another video that of the explosion that it looks like a mushroom cloud. Clearly, they used some of the heaviest missiles they've used since the ceasefire. The explosions rocked the city of Saida, which is almost 20 kilometers away from the site that was targeted, and they fired at least 20 GBUs on the construction sites and the materials and machinery in these squares. It's really the sight of it is really disgusting how they targeted this. And we saw yesterday the president in the middle of the night, the prime minister and the speaker of the house, all of them issue statements condemning this. So this is now some of the highest condemnations of attacks by the Israelis, and the fastest ones we see by the government officials. And this is because now it's not going to only be harming the reconstruction in the south. These attacks on these major companies, some of them government-owned companies, are going to be affecting construction all across the country.
Oh, and obviously the reason that they're doing this is effectively to prevent construction. Like if you're blowing up a tractor, if you're blowing up construction equipment, it leads to follow that you just don't want them to build and let's say rebuild in those areas. Where is this taking place? This is southern Lebanon?
Yes, this is southern Lebanon, but the village of Ansar is almost considered north of the Litania River. So it's pretty far away from the border region, at least 40, 50 kilometers from the border. So this is deliberate. The villages around the quarry were not harmed during the war, most of them. So it was a shocker for all the civilians. You could hear the screams in the video that you showed earlier. Again, It shows you how vicious the Zionists are. They're trying to make sure that the civilians of Lebanon suffer indefinitely as long as they do not submit to the will of the Jewish supremacist colony. And so now this is not anymore a military battle. This is a battle of will and honor. And if the Lebanese people give up, like the rest of the region that signed deals with the Zionists, then the Lebanese people will be slaves like the others.
So what is the plan to prevent any kind of construction at all in southern Lebanon, to prevent any rebuilding, any construction, etc.? That seems to be the objective.
That's definitely the objective, and to, either totally not allow the reconstruction. So at some point, the Israelis will invade and attempt to loot the land as they did in Syria and the West Bank and Gaza. And or to force the government of Lebanon to negotiate with the Zionists on their own rights. And so now that we saw the Trump peace proposal and all of the Arabic and Muslim leaders coming and kissing the ring of Master in the White House in Sharm el-Sheikh summit, it is just a few people in the Arabic and Muslim worlds that are still self-respecting, that refuse to come and kiss the ring.
Yeah. What is going to be the response to this? I mean, because what it sounds like you're saying is that the plan is, well, we're going to keep bombing and we're going to keep destroying any ability for you to reconstruct until you agree to just give us the territory and give us that land. Basically, it's theft through military compulsion. That's what it sounds like.
Yes, we're back to 1700 style of colonialism. Highway robbery, piracy, butchery, genocide, as a way to colonize and loot resources and lands. And unfortunately, the other poles in this multipolar world that is arising, whether it's Russia or China, they are not, it's not that they don't care, they're not willing to either get in the way of the empire looting other nations. They may defend their own borders, like China or Russia defending in Ukraine and Taiwan, but they will just sit down and watch as others are genocided and looted. And if I'm America and I see that the Chinese and the Russians are not going to do nothing as long as I'm not on their border, well, of course, I'm going to go and send my navy to the borders of Venezuela and begin threatening to loot the resources of Venezuela and genocide its people. Of course, if I am Trump, I would loot any country I want in Africa or Asia, as long as it's not directly on the borders of China and Russia. So I think the Chinese and the Russians, with their non-interference, as they call it, they're basically signaling to the Americans that they will not intervene with their colonial genocidal aims as long as it doesn't affect them directly.
Do you think that's a mistake?
It's a mistake because all the goodwill that has been accumulating around the world for China and Russia by the peoples of the world that are seeking liberation has been in the hopes, of course, that China and Russia will return to the good old days of the non-aligned movement, of supporting decolonization movements like in the 60s and 70s. And up until now, it doesn't seem like that this is happening. So if this continues this way, all of us that have been trying to inform around the world about how China and Russia are different are going to run out of excuses of why we're saying China and Russia are different than the United States in how they deal with other people. if the only way that China and Russia deals differently with other nations than the way that the empire ruled from DC does, is to just sit down and watch you get slaughtered, and while selling weapons and or materials to the ones who are slaughtering you, and then they tell us that this is not interference. Well, they might as well just jump on the wagon of imperial, machination and get over with it.
Yeah, it's been unfortunate. I've heard some people make the argument that China should be criticized or that Russia should be criticized on this. And that's always confusing to me. These are states. And, you have this kind of BRICS conglomeration that's coming together. But it seems to be very disengaged. And maybe an argument can be made right now. It's a talking shop. But I understand your take. I totally get where you're coming from with this. It's funny, I'm going to have a guest on coming up who is talking about Russia and Syria, because Jolani, and let me get your take on that while you're here. Jolani is in Russia, in Moscow, shaking hands. The look on Putin's face as he shakes his hand is priceless, completely priceless. Where's that video? Right here. And I have to think that is invested in this look is what he understands as a loss. Right here. He has to know that this is not a win by any stretch of the imagination. Meaning, even if you make a deal with Jolani, even if you think that this was a deal that you need to make, this is not a sustainable process. Or do you disagree with me on this? I mean, for one, Istanbul has now have a certain amount of control over those Russian bases. And I know not in a direct sense, but Erdogan cannot be trusted at all. Erdogan is the same guy who called Netanyahu Hitler while simultaneously giving materials, oil, energy to that same Hitler. This is the bed that these guys are in now. Give me your take on this meeting. I know you probably have seen it.
Yeah, I mean, in an interview, Jolani told the world that they wouldn't have been able to take over Damascus without the direct support of President Putin and Russia. And of course, I've been saying this since the fall of the Assad government, that it was Russia that handed over Damascus to Jolani. It was Russia that jammed the communication of the Syrian military during the attack on Aleppo. It was Russia that bombarded the 8th Brigade as it left Latakia and was entering Idlib. It was Russia that bombarded the Hezbollah convoys that were liberated Homs and were on their way to liberate Hama. So the loss of Syria was coordinated with Russia. These, the Wahhabi death squads that were besieged in Idlib didn't have enough manpower or capabilities to occupy the whole country in a few days without the direct intervention of Russia. It was Russia also that kidnapped President Assad and is holding him hostage in Damascus, so he doesn't have any influence over what's happening in the country. So, this is a question that has to be put forward to everybody. Remember, the Soviet Union dissolved itself. The leaders of the Soviet Union dissolved the Soviet Union in hopes to realign with the West. We know that President Putin begged for a long time that Russia joins NATO. And now we see how President Putin has rebranded Russia as a Christian white country and the savior of Christian whitehood. So these are all signals that show that Russia, its top priority and top interest is to join the West, not to be a contender with it, to be a leader within that block of whiteness, manufactured whiteness. And all of this is actually the reason that we see what happened in Syria. If Russia was actually caring to be a new pole of power that is in direct confrontation with the West, then it would have put all efforts to help the Axis of Resistance win the war, not only for Syria to survive, but for the Axis of Resistance to defeat the Zionist colony, or to defeat the Arabic monarchs that have been installed and protected by the West over the last 80 years. But no, Russia made trade with the Gulf countries. Russia continued its own citizens, allowing them to go and immigrate to the Zionist colony, and Russia stopped Syria from using air defenses to shoot down Israeli planes. So in the end, what is clear is that Russia's squabble with the West at this moment is not about being a counterpole. It is actually because it wants to be part of the club, and it's not being allowed, and is giving away Syria, allowing the destruction of Gaza and the destruction of Lebanon, as while its own air defenses are in Syria, not doing nothing, was kind of like its credentials being put forward to the Zionists who currently run the empire. So the getting closer to Israel and allowing Israel to occupy Syria and destroy Lebanon and Palestine and Gaza is all kind of a giving one thing a plus point from the Zionists who run, it seems, the empire right now.
Okay, you take a much stronger position on this than I do on this. I did see the interview with Jolani, and what I took from that interview was that at a certain point, a deal was being made where Russia effectively made side deals with Jolani. I didn't see anything about attacking Syrian forces. I didn't see anything. Yeah, you take a much stronger position on this than I do. I'm not going to contest it. I'm not going to push on this, but I'm just pointing out, I don't see it this way. Meaning, to me, there is a middle ground between we have limits and we're not going to fight this war if we indeed believe that Syria is not going to be able to fight this war, versus Russia turned around and attacked Syria on their way out. Those are two radically different positions. Like, let me ask you this. Why do you think that it will be in Russia's interest to do something like that? I mean, they put in their own people, well, their own soldiers died defending Syria. Why would they turn around and just attack Syria? Just, like I can hear argument of the Astana agreements. Syria effectively being pushed to take those agreements. I hear the argument in the sense of not using air defense and air power or the weapon systems to defend themselves. It is a stark thing, though, to say that Russia, on its way out, murdered Syrian forces as they left because of some kind of deal they made with Jolani, or that they want to be part of the Western club after losing 200,000 people in a war. That seems extreme to me, but make your case. I could be wrong.
Yeah, look, I hear constantly this with a lot of racist undertones to it. Oh, well, if the Syrians are not going to fight for themselves, why should I fight with them or for them? Or the Arabs sold them their own peoples and their own nations, and, we're not going to fight for you. Of course, this is, on the one hand, is very ultra racist, blaming the victims for their own suffering. It's like the indigenous nations in the Americas are to blame for their own genocide and the colonialism, because they didn't have the weapons to fight the Spanish, British, and French with gunpowder, right? It's the problems of the Arabs having been under 100 years of colonialism that they don't own their own hypersonic missiles other than Yemen, okay? As if, we are to blame for our suffering, not the colonialism, not the genocide, not the destruction of our societies. And the other thing is that if the United States, by the way, Israel wouldn't survive one day against the Palestinians of Gaza, let alone the axis of resistance, if the United States didn't supply it, and the West as a whole, combined might of the military of the West and its resources and its media, if that wasn't all enslaved to the Zionist colony completely, if one day of supplies didn't arrive. The other thing is that actually if one day of soldiers and special forces from the West and intelligence capabilities of the West stopped, Israel will collapse. Nobody's asking Russia or China to come on the ground and fight on our behalf, like the United States Special Forces and the UK Special Forces and the German Special Forces, the Canadian and every NATO member Special Forces are actually on the ground in Gaza and here in South Lebanon. We're not asking the Russians to do that or the Chinese, but for God's sake, at least have the courage, have the
I'll come back. Is that me or you? Is that me or you? Come on, come on, come on, come on. Who's frozen? Who's frozen? Come on, come on. Okay. Okay. So it's Lace frozen. All right. He'll be back. He'll be back. Come back, Laith. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Okay. Laith will be back. Laith will be back. I want him to finish that point. I don't want to interrupt him on that point. Okay. He will be back. He will be back. God damn it. I want him to finish the point. I'm not being racist. And I need to nail that down when he gets back. Look, it is fair for me to ask this idea of, is there a middle ground between making a side deal versus murdering the people who you fought and died with? That's not me being racist. That's a fair question. And there is no way I believe that Laith believes that I don't know that Israel would not exist if it wasn't for the collective West keeping it intact, or that it wasn't the United States and all of these other countries, these Gulf states, these Quisling governments that were responsible for the decimation of Syria. That's not what I'm asking. Yeah, come on, Laith, come back, come back, come back. I want to come back. I want to have this conversation. It is an extreme position to me to make the case that Russia, who fought and bled and died trying to defend Syria and did so for 20 years or more, that they immediately turn around and murder the people who they were working with. That is an extreme position. It's not wrong for me to ask that question. It's not wrong. And obviously, I know my government is made of monsters. We collectively on this channel mourned when Syria fell. We were not unclear on the responsibilities of our governments in that decline, in that fall, nor do we look at it as anything but an overthrow, and a violent, vicious overthrow at that. Yes, thank you. Good. Laith, I want you to finish your point. No.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I ran out of that and I had to refill it. So yeah, I was trying to say that what people are asking Russia and China to do is to be as reliable as a supplier or to their allies as the United States is. The US sends F-35s to Israel, sends its THAADs to Israel. Russia doesn't send its S-400s to Syria. It sells them to Turkey, the enemy of Syria. It doesn't send them to Iran. It sells them to Saudi, the enemy of Iran. So this is the main problem. No, I don't want Russia to fight for me. I don't want Chinese troops to be on the ground in the region here. What I'm asking is to have an ally as reliable as the United States is to its allies. If the Russia and China are not willing to be allies as reliable as the United States, of course, no one should depend on them for anything. And Iran is correct on its path of building its own technologies and being independent militarily, so it never has to depend on China and Russia.
Yeah, agreed. That part, I get. You have me on that part. I guess, look, it's not racist of me to ask. I mean, there is a vast difference between what you just said there, which makes sense, of Russia as an unreliable partner, which people have been making the case for several months now. And at the very least, they should be reliable to their friends, as reliable as the U.S. is to their friends in the region. That part I get. Saying that they murdered people on the way out feels extreme to me. That's all. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And obviously, Laith, I'm not taking this racist sentiment that some of these other people make. I obviously know that the United States was directly responsible for decades of trying to destroy Syria, that Israel wouldn't exist without the collective West backing them up. I'm not making this case that the Syrians weren't willing to fight for Syria. I guess I'm making this case that the way it looked was that people threw down their weapons and you had Russian troops swearing. That's not even racist. I'm just pointing out that it came across from the Russian perspective, and they could be wrong in this perspective, and maybe they should have fought harder in this case. You may be right. That how are we going to win this if it doesn't seem like the Syrian military is going to be able to maintain itself? Meaning
look, what Russia said actually was the most important part of the propaganda that followed and was happening as Syria was falling. If it wasn't for the Russian propaganda spheres and the Twitter spheres that were saying this ridiculous thing, that the Syrian military just disappeared, there wouldn't be anything to be said against the Syrian people. This is actually something that I will never forgive those Russian propagandists for saying. I know, I sat down and spoke with generals from the Syrian military. I have seen photos and videos of the battles outside Idlib city where the 8th Brigade of the Republican Guard was at the gates entering the city when they were bombed. I know about what happened in the communications network of the Syrian military. There's tens of generals that died, were executed and fought to the last minute on their barracks while the hordes of the Wahhabi despots were coming. You cannot go and collaborate with Turkey, and while Turkey is sending its drones to kill Russian soldiers in Ukraine, and then let the Turkish Air Force and drones fly over Syria, bombard the Syrian positions while you sit and watch. You cannot expect me as a Syrian not to see that as a treason, as betrayal. It is betrayal. And so Russia has decided that it wants to fight the Ukraine war, which is instigated by the Zionists, not only by NATO, led by a Jewish supremacist president of Ukraine that says openly, I want to have another Israel in Ukraine, and go play footsie with Netanyahu in the Ukraine of our region. This is illogical. No one with any brain cells strategic understanding can tell you that this is good strategy. The only thing, and given that I know that the foreign affairs of Russia is some of the most brilliant people, and Putin is a brilliant man, he is not a Trump, wacko, then these are choices made. And the choice that Russia made is that it will align itself with Israel in our region. It will align itself with the Sauds in our region in hopes that that will have some effect on its battle in Ukraine, and that it somehow, in the end, will be accepted into the club. And that's something for China to watch out for, because believe me, given that Russia sold its most important ally since the end of World War II, which is Syria, in this situation, who knows? Maybe Russia will sell China out for the right price also.
Laith, if Russia believes that they're fools, if they believe that, then Putin is not as intellectually competent as we think he is. Meaning that seems to be so outrageous. The United States is not going to care one iota if Russia works closely with Saudi Arabia or works closely with any of these people. Ultimately, the U.S. has an objective of primacy. If Russia doesn't know that by now, then yeah, they are as outlandish or as insane. I don't know their motivation on this, but if that's what they think, they are massively wrong. If that's what they think, they're massively wrong. Did Syria, do you think they considered Russia part of the resistance? Or was Russia always outside that sphere from the perspective of, let's say, the Middle East, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, etc.?
Look, Syria learned in the 1973 war, when the Syrian military had liberated all the Golan Heights and reached the shores of Tabariya Lake, or the Sea of Galilee, and the Egyptian military crossed Sinai and entered Gaza and was rolling towards Tel Aviv. In that moment, the United States threatened to use nuclear weapons against Damascus and Cairo. And in that moment, the Russians crapped their pants. And instead of threatening back, saying that if that happens, they will also nuke Tel Aviv, they immediately stopped all the supply of weapons and parts for the tanks and air force and so forth of the Syrian and Egyptian military, and the advances were lost, and basically the USSR gave up. So from that point on, Syria and President Hafez al-Assad, the late president, the father of Bashar, said openly, anyone that wants to defeat the Zionist colony must know that they will have to fight the United States directly themselves. And it's also clear that Russia will not defend you like the United States defends the Zionist colony. Now, fast forward 40 years, and in the middle of the war on Syria, Iran, with General Soleimani, martyr General Soleimani, understood that the only weakness of the axis of resistance is the air force. We don't have equivalents of F-16s and F-35s. And that is why General Soleimani went to and met with President Putin directly and convinced him to send the Air Force, at least to neutralize the airspace of Syria from intervention by Western powers. And in a way, it did that. But then when all the Western air forces withdrew and only Israel was the one bombarding Syria, this is where the limit happened. And of course, we had the war on Ukraine triggered, all of those things to distract Russia from the battle in Syria. And eventually, with the assassination of General Soleimani, it seems those who were visiting visiting Putin from Israel convinced him to conflict completely, and that's what we have. And so no one should, in the Arabic world here, in the Muslim world, people need to try to take the path of Iran, of building their own militaries. Unfortunately, there's not many Arabic countries that are left that are not occupied directly by the West.
Do you think this is an issue of weakness by Russia? That the plan to overextend Russia effectively worked? That it may not necessarily be talked about, but for all intents and purposes, Russia's, as you point out, preoccupied in Ukraine, and this idea of going to war with the United States, which is effectively what they would be doing if indeed they get into this kind of fight with Israel, that is the thing that is the sticking point. That it's not so much they want to be part of the club, but they recognize on some level that any direct engagement with Israel is effectively a direct engagement with the United States. Or do you discount that? And by the way, I'm not trying to change your point of view on this. I'm the perspective that Russia is trying to be in the Western club. They would have to be so out of their minds. It makes me think there's another rationale for it. And that rationale could just be weakness, that they're not as strong as they come across in the way that they project themselves. But give me your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, there's a lot of hype about the power of Russia. And it's fine. I understand they need to look that way. They need their people to believe in this and all of that. But you cannot expect Russia to fight the combined might of the West. But that's again not what we want as peoples in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. We're not expecting Russia to fight these wars, but either sell the weapons or exchange the technologies. Why does every colonized people have to start from zero? I mean, Israel didn't start from zero. Israel stole all the nuclear technology. France gave it everything. The UK gave it everything. Every technology that Israel has, it didn't start it from zero. So why do the wretched of the earth are the ones that are expected to start from zero? No, Russia, if it can't afford selling weapons, it can't produce enough of them, for instance, to sell to other countries, well, give us the technology. Iran can build its own fighter jets if you transfer some technology to it. But that's not happening. So we're left with, a clear frustration in this relationship. No technologies, no weapons, and no military intervention. Therefore, what is Russia good for? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's not a good place to be, right? Look, I get your point. I know it sounds like I'm arguing with you, but I do get your point. If you're letting your friends down, how many friends are you going to have later? And that's the way it's coming across, that they're letting their friends down. Wow. Where do you think the thing with Lebanon goes, by the way?
I think we're going to be back at war pretty soon. Either it's going to be a war on Lebanon by itself, or a war combined with Iran and Yemen. The situation is untenable this way. It can't stay like this for much longer. Something has to give. Either there will be a response from the resistance pretty soon, and or the Israelis will do a full attack. Whichever way, it's clear that this is not going to be sustainable the way it is. I think also the United States has recognized that it cannot depend on the internal foes of Hezbollah to either trigger a civil war and or for the military and the government of Lebanon to be the ones that confront Hezbollah. The military is clear that it will not use its force on its own citizens, and the government of Prime Minister Nawaf Salam doesn't have the popular support, so there's no local way to limit Hezbollah's power. Therefore, it's going to be the Israelis and the Americans that are going to have to try to break the will of the Lebanese people. And these attacks today and over the last week are kind of indicators of that we're raising the intensity of the battle.
Do you have an expectation of Israel to attack Iran?
Yeah, I mean, look,
that's been going on here in the States, and it's like there's been mixed signals on this. Give me your thoughts on this.
Yes, I think, look, as long as there is a Muslim pole that is counter-Zionist, that has technology and population and resources, this is an existential threat to the Zionist. Because by the mere existence of Iran, even if it doesn't have an open war right now with the Zionists, by the mere existence of it as an example of what you can achieve, even when you are countering the Zionist and all the empire behind them, a successful example, then it inspires others. What we saw there with the Sharm el-Sheikh summit was directed towards the Muslim and Arabic peoples to tell them, you have to kiss the ring if you want to survive. Iran not being there was a smart thing. Otherwise, it would have looked like that it also capitulated. And so right now, Iran is still a symbol of Muslim sovereignty and an example of one way to be and still survive and be successful. Therefore, the United States and Iran and the Gulf monarchs that are all vassals have a vested interest in destroying Iran no matter what.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's they don't seem to have the military capability to do it currently, though. Like the air defense missiles and those type of things seem to be lacking. And they weren't working all that great even when it was effectively taking place. By the same token, rationality is not something that I really ascribe to Israel on this. So you may entirely be right about this. Laith, before I let you go, one of my audience members wanted to know where they can get that shirt.
Oh, yeah. Look,
I love that shirt.
I was thinking of making some and selling them, but then I looked at the shipping costs. No, because the shipping costs will be, prohibitive for people to send them from Lebanon to any other place. But, people can download our logo and print their own and put our website on there. That will help us definitely in spreading the word. And I'm going to put on the website those stuff for people if they want to print out their own shirts and stickers and stuff like this. Our website is freepalestine.video. We'd really appreciate donations. By the way, just the day before yesterday, had the cameraman and my best friend on the road always. We were going down to the south to film, and his car, the whole gearbox came off. This car, we drove close to 200,000 kilometers on it, 180 miles and 180,000 miles in a year and a half on it. So please donate, help us so we can have some mobility,
And by the way, I can help you with the t-shirt thing where you don't have to email it or send it. People can get it and it will just mail it out to wherever the people are. There are a few places like that. I will send you a link after the fact and see if that would help with that. Because that would also help with
Perfect.
Laith, I am illuminated by this conversation. I enjoy these conversations. I really do. Thank you for this. And just so the audience will know, Laith Marouf, he is an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant. You can find him on Free Palestine TV, that is on Twitter, or freepalestine.video, that is on the web. And definitely check him out. He, as he points out, 200,000 miles within the course of a year. He is all over the place and has been recording, videotaping, and keeping a documentary of what has been taking place in Lebanon and broadly. Laith, stay badass, man. Thank you for this.
See you soon, Jamal.
Bye-bye. All right. That was a great conversation with Laith. My guest just popped in and popped out. She will be back. We're going to have Vanessa Beeley. She's coming on the show. I haven't talked to Vanessa Beeley. I keep calling her Beasley. I haven't talked to Vanessa Beeley in a while. She is also in Lebanon. She is the one that pointed my point of view to this clip. Come back, Vanessa. Come back. Come back. Come back. Come back. Come back, Vanessa. This clip. This is deeply humiliating. This is deeply humiliating. Have you ever watched photos that people take where the world leader cringes at having to take a photo with the guy? This is an exact example of this. This is not what Putin wants to be. He will need a shower after this. He will need a shower after that. That is, yeah, they reached some kind of deal. Look, if you look at Jolani, he gave a sit-down interview. In the sit-down interview, they asked him about a deal that was made with the Russians during the war. He acknowledged that there was a deal made with the Russians during the war. In the way that he explained it, when it became clear that, and again, this is his point of view, head chopper's point of view. When it became clear that Syria was going to fall, that the Russians made a deal in order to effectively keep the military bases, and they stuck with and kept the deal. Putin is shaking the hand of a man that was responsible for the death of Russians. Now, I know it's a war, and I know these guys are pragmatic, so take it with a grain of salt, meaning Putin is. But that's a bad look. And whether I agree with everything Laith was saying or not, it's secondary to a very devastating point. And that devastating point is, if your friends are looking at you, be it India, China, whether it was Syria at that point, whether it was Iran, etc., and they're looking at this new multipolar world and this kind of axis, and they are looking on some level for friendship and for association, and maybe not necessarily in the belligerence that the United States is willing to effectively end the war for Israel, but definitely support and cooperation. The perspective in the Middle East among many of the people in that region, especially with the fall of Syria, and even during the Iran war, if you remember, was that Russia wasn't the partner that they thought. Whether that's true or false is secondary to the point that Laith's feeling on this is sincere and is shared by a lot. Vanessa, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I can't hear anything. 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Not quite sure why.
Okay, you're working out. I'm gonna give your bio. Vanessa Beeley. Give her bio. Vanessa Beeley. She's an international investigative journalist. You can follow her on Twitter at Vanessa Beeley. You can read her articles. I need to make sure that the bio is still correct in regards to the articles and everything else. But Vanessa, can you hear me yet? She cannot hear me yet. She has that look of concentration. It's okay.
1 second.
It's okay. You're okay.
Let me
okay.
sign out and come back in again. Sorry.
Okay. Look, Laith is not toxic. He's not. He is. You have to allow for other people's experience. You just do. It's just life. Obviously, I disagree with some of the takes, but that's secondary again to the point that that's a legit feeling. And if you're taking a litmus test of people in the Middle East, that may be the feeling. That's not being toxic. That's you watching a country fall. You're watching ethnic minorities being murdered in that country. I mean, for God's sake, Syria had these gorgeous women in bikinis on the beach weeks before jihadist animals, the hordes, invaded and overthrew the country. Put that in context. And if that's your country, and you're watching your country effectively not just fall, but a terrorist organization take over that country with the help of the West, you may feel salty. He's not toxic. He's just been straight. But that's how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. I
Excellent.
don't know what happened.
Success.
Something went wrong
It's
in the
okay.
ether.
It is okay. Success is a damn good thing. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Yeah. You know, with the state of the world, it's quite hard to maintain any kind of buoyancy, but we try.
You are not the only one that have told me that. I've had conversations with people who have been in the depths of depression over the stuff, especially people who are living in the area or related to the area. And just for the audience, Vanessa Beeley, she's an investigative journalist. Vanessa, where can people find your work right now? This may be old.
No. The best place is probably at Substack. That's where I sort of publish pretty much everything. Telegram and X, YouTube. Oh, under Vanessa Beeley. It's very easy to find.
Okay. All right. I will put this in your bio. The reason I brought you on, I saw a post that you made, and it piqued my interest. And it wasn't just you who made this post. Another gentleman, Kavork, also made a video. And both of you were effectively talking about this depressing scene that came out of the Kremlin the other day.
Yes. You mean the welcome of Al-Qaeda to the Kremlin? Yes.
And Putin shaking his hand.
God. Look at them
and
all.
There's this still frame of this that I'm fascinated by. Look at Putin's face. He clearly doesn't want to be there. And he clearly doesn't want to be in this picture. But he's in this picture.
I don't know.
Well, let's get into that.
I don't know.
Let's get into that.
I might disagree with you on that one.
No,
I mean, Putin's face is incredibly inscrutable anyway. You know, it's very difficult usually to tell what he's thinking or so on. But
it looked like he had to either go to the bathroom or he just didn't want to be there. But fair enough. He's like, oh my God, this picture is being taken.
Might have something to do with standing next to someone that's towering over him as well. That's
that too, right? It's like, this is the hand that's chopped off heads. That's a rough thing to watch, especially for people who paid attention to all of this take place, who knows that as he's shaking that man's hand, that ethnic minorities are being murdered and slaughtered with his gangs doing it. And who felt some kind of way as the Syrian government collapsed. That is a difficult picture to watch. Give me your take, just in general, of all of this. Because you pointed out this is a dark day in Russian history. And I'll let you go and explain why you say it in that way.
Look, I think the position I take is that Russia, the mistake that was made, in my humble opinion, as someone that was living in Syria for the last 5 years and remained until Damascus had actually fallen and was present on the ground during the last battles, from basically Tartus to Hama, Homs, and then I ended up in Damascus the day before it actually fell.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I think, I mean, I literally had an hour to pack a bag and take my dog and get out of Syria on the Sunday morning, so on the 8th. So I think, first of all, I want to sort of bring in the context that, from my perspective, the mistake that was made in Syria by the leadership was in believing that Russia was an ideological ally. And while when I look at the bigger picture, there were mistakes made on both sides throughout Russia's intervention, so from 2015 up until December 2024. There was mistakes made from the leadership of Syria. And I think from 2020 onwards, when Trump brought in the Caesar sanctions, which were on top of, 10 years, 9 years of war and energy deprivation, because of course the United States was occupying the Northeast and the oil and agricultural resources there, both directly and through its proxies, first of all ISIS and then the Kurdish factions in the Northeast. And Idlib had been allowed to fester, the armed groups there, under the dominance of Jolani. I wouldn't say leadership, because Jolani was maneuvered into position. The US, Washington, carried out assassinations of his main opposition in Idlib to ensure that he remained in power. And we know that, interestingly, that combined with from 2020, when we also had the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes, the leader of the Iraqi resistance, by Trump, who had lured them into a trap under the auspices of it being a diplomatic mission. And then, of course, we know that they were assassinated. So all of this kind of combined, in my opinion, from 2020 to really push Syria into an economic freefall, which, and again, this, we have to remember that this situation is orchestrated, right? Which allowed corruption to flourish. In my opinion, again, it's reduced the central governance and dispersed it into mafia cartels that were running the country from different areas of influence and corruption. And that included the Syrian Arab Army. At the same time, Russia was pushing President Assad towards normalization with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. This was very much Russia's plan, because Russia actually wanted to get Iran and Hezbollah out of Syria. That was very clearly their plan, to increase their influence on Assad, to benefit from their relationship with Assad, to consolidate on their position in Syria, of course on the coast, but also in the northeast, in Qamishli, and in the south. And by doing so, to a large degree, they reduced Assad's relationship with Iran and with Hezbollah. They damaged it, actually. In 2023, Damascus expelled the Ansarullah embassy. This was on the basis, it was negotiated by Iran, but it was on the basis that Saudi Arabia, if this were to happen, would increase humanitarian aid to Syria, which we never saw happen. And by pushing Assad towards Saudi Arabia and UAE, what this ultimately means, of course, is pushing Syria towards some kind of normalization with Israel. And I genuinely believe this is what Russia was trying to achieve. Why do I think that? Because if we look at the Russian relationship with Israel, they don't have necessarily cast iron strategic agreements and partnerships in place, but they have what is known as a beneficial mutual friendship. And in 2015, actually, when Russia intervened in the war in Syria to effectively damage or prevent the advance of ISIS in particular, Netanyahu went on record as saying it's fine because Russia's objectives or Russia's agenda in Syria is the same as ours. This is a very interesting statement. Why would he say this? During Russia's presence in Syria under President Assad, they had around 49 phone calls between them, between Netanyahu and Putin. We know that Russia effectively had come to an agreement with Israel that it wouldn't interfere with Israel's attacks on Iranian advisors, military advisors, and military on the ground, or with Hezbollah. And of course, towards the end of 2023, 2024, we saw the assassination of Iranian officials, even at the Iranian embassy, which is, I mean, this is a war crime in itself, right? Iranian generals have been very clear about the fact that they believe Russia turned off its radars whenever there was an Israeli attack. Russian air defense didn't participate in the taking down of missiles. They weren't necessarily needed, to be fair. The Syrian Arab Army did an excellent job with relatively rudimentary equipment. I mean, it's still good equipment, but they did a good job with what they had, because a lot of people talk about, you know, the fact that Russia had effectively supplied the S-300s, but we were told that they had never actually really given the Syrian army the training needed to use the S-300s. At the same time, Russia was providing a service to Israel in the south by effectively acting as a kind of UNIFIL policing operation on the border with the occupied Golan territories. This was in order to prevent Iranian or Hezbollah or Palestinian resistance factions reaching the border of the occupied Golan territories, right? So they were effectively defending Israel's occupation of the Golan. If we then also think about, I mean, there's 100 million things I could talk about, but let's focus on Idlib, for example. In 2019, the Syrian Arab Army had made massive inroads in the liberation of southern Idlib, northern Hama, which borders Idlib.
Right.
And they had the opportunity to actually advance and take Idlib. They could have done so. At this point, Russia and Iran came to an agreement that they would halt those advances on the basis that Turkey would basically dismantle the Al-Qaeda elements over time, right? What happened? This is history now. We know what happened, right? Is that Turkey effectively used that opportunity to increase its bases in Idlib. It basically invaded. I remember being in Sarakeb, which is in southern Idlib, in, when was it, 2018. Mm-hmm. And the army had just retaken Sarakeb, the Syrian army. It was Turkish drones that attacked, and I was there when the charred bodies of the Syrian army soldiers were driven past us in lorry loads, truckloads, to the hospital. And it was temporarily retaken by the terrorist factions. Russian air defense did nothing. And at that point, Lavrov actually sent a message of condolence to Erdogan on the death of Turkish soldiers, military, that had invaded Syria. So this is just, I'm talking partly as analysis, partly from what I actually saw on the ground. Another time I was in Jurin, which is a small town in northern Hama, southern Idlib. And from the town, you could actually see the Turkish outposts and surveillance installations. And while I was actually interviewing a family in Jurin, we were attacked. How do I know that we were directly attacked? Was because the shelling came in at decreasing distances away from where we were. So we knew that they were actually honing in on where we were, right? So all of this was effectively facilitated by Russia, even down to the fact that the humanitarian corridors at Bab al-Hawa, for example, that were being used by the UN, but of course were being abused by the armed groups to bring in weapons and equipment, and also to provide revenue for those armed groups, were not fully closed down. Bab al-Hawa and one other corridor was still running, and Russia didn't veto this. And I remember having a conversation, it's like, why aren't you shutting these corridors down? Because effectively they're just bringing in equipment and forces to enable the development, the reinforcement, and the rearming of all of these various terrorist groups that, under the Russian facilitated reconciliation agreements, were bussed out of the various areas that were liberated by the Syrian Arab Army into Idlib. So what happened? Every single area of conflict that was effectively liberated by the Syrian Arab Army, all of the terrorists from those particular areas were bussed into Idlib. So can you imagine? There were literally hundreds of thousands that were gathering in Idlib that had the maintenance of supply through Turkey into Idlib that was providing revenue, arms, training. And in the last year, very important, Ukraine was coming in. Ukrainian special forces were coming into Idlib and training, combat training, Jolani's forces, and Jolani in return was sending militia to Ukraine to fight against Russia. And yet still Idlib was left festering, if you like, in preparation for what happened November 2024, December 2024.
The UN had pointed out that there were like 50,000 terrorists in Idlib, meaning they acknowledge that this is a terrorist haven. How do you explain that? Like put your analysis hat on for me for a moment. Why would they allow Idlib to continue to exist? Why would they trust Erdogan, who's a snake in the grass?
Yeah, I mean,
like nobody trusts Erdogan. I don't understand. I didn't understand why Idlib continued to exist. Immediately, Russia, Iran, and Syria had taken back the overwhelming majority of the territory.
Yeah.
Why would they stop there?
It's a very good question. Whether it was totally based on trust of Turkey, I think to a degree it is, and it's a fatal mistake if that really is the case. And actually, you know, what happened in the end is very complex. Turkey fell into a trap, but it pulled Russia into a degree of a trap also by basically fooling them into thinking they could trust Erdogan to end what was happening in Idlib rather than increase it and use it as this opportunity for him to expand his annexation of Syrian territory. He now holds, you know, a vast swathe of Syrian territory across the north, from Aleppo across to basically the Euphrates, and beyond the Euphrates, or in the northeast, that's the Kurdish factions, right? So that's a very difficult question to answer, to be honest. If I want to put on my very cynical hat and seeing now the collaboration between Russia and Israel, perhaps this was eventually part of the ultimate plan. Because the thing is that when you look at what Russia facilitated, and even myself at the time, I thought, okay, this is good because Syria is showing mercy to these armed groups and so on. They're giving them amnesty and reconciliation. They're giving them an opportunity to be resegregated into Syrian society, to be reabsorbed into the Syrian armed forces. But they betrayed the Syrian armed forces on a number of occasions. There was a massacre in Kabul in the outskirts of Damascus because of the reabsorption of these armed groups that basically gave away the positions of the Syrian Arab Army to the terrorist groups, right? And at the same time, in Dara, in the south, and you have to remember, Russia negotiated all of these amnesty and reconciliation because they were seen as a neutral power, a neutral peace broker, if you like, between Damascus and the armed groups, many of which also are not Syrian. We have to remember that. When Russia effectively took control of Dara in the south, and again, I went there after it had come under the control of Russia, what they would do is they would effectively leave the areas that they had administration of from a reconciliation perspective. They would leave those areas under the control of elements of the armed groups. that remained behind. So in Dara, it was Shabab al-Sunnah, who remained in control. And Russia actually then formed the 5th Corps, which is part of the 8th Brigade, I hope I've got that right, under the control of Ahmed al-Auda. So these were a conglomeration of armed groups that were brought under the Russian umbrella and left to basically police the area around Dara. And it's interesting to note that when Damascus fell, they were the first to enter Damascus, not HTS, not Jolani. They were the first. And they were the ones who actually, apparently, according to various testimonies, they were the ones that extricated President Assad and took him to the airport. And from there, we know he went to Khammim and then to Moscow, where he's been given humanitarian asylum, not political asylum, which I find still is bothering me.
What's the difference?
The difference is basically, I think, under Russian law, political asylum gives you immediately far more rights. You have the right to become a Russian citizen. You have some defense against extradition. Humanitarian asylum is sort of less inclusive, less comprehensive. I'm not an expert on Russian law, but I did look it up on AI, so I can't guarantee that the answer is 100%
There's
correct.
obviously a difference. Otherwise, they would call it political.
Yeah, there is a big difference. And political asylum is not very often handed out, of course, by Russia. But you would think that someone that had been an ally of President Putin since he came to power, so since 2000, I mean President Assad, you would think that there would be political asylum, not only humanitarian asylum. If someone is an expert in asylum laws in Russia, please feel free to fill me in on any details that I'm missing. It's just a question I've raised because I don't quite understand why it's only humanitarian asylum.
Explain something to me. Russia, the deal that they've effectively made with Jolani. Jolani is effectively a stooge of Istanbul. At the very least, that's the way it's understood. Turkey has a massive sway in regards to the politics and affairs of Syria currently. The basis that Russia made a deal with in order to maintain, you would think that those bases will be in a much weaker position under the current regime as opposed to under Assad. Meaning, as you point out, that relationship with Assad went back from the time that Putin got into office. Why would they be willing to give that up? That just seems to be such a loss. Like it seems to be a profound loss, not just for Syria, but also for the relationship between these two countries.
But I don't think Russia perceives that it has given it up. This is my point. This is where I think you have to look at the pragmatic realpolitik of this, right? I think what Russia is doing is what is best for Russia. And this is my point. I don't think anybody should see, and I'm not actually saying there's anything wrong in that, by the way. But what I'm saying is that people should stop attaching their own ideological vision onto what Russia is doing, because I think that is the mistake. Because if we look at what Russia has done or what has actually happened since the fall of Damascus, first of all, the president or a representative from Belarus came to broker a meeting between Jolani's regime and Bogdanov, the deputy foreign minister from Russia. This was within 6 weeks. So within 6 weeks, Russia had legitimized Jolani's completely unelected Takfiri regime, which is stuffed full of foreign Takfiri. And that's another issue that I want to come on to. How many Chechens and Northern Caucasus elements are within Jolani's regime that Russia doesn't want to come back to Russia, right? They want them contained inside Syria. So that's another very important point. So they were among the first to legitimize Jolani's regime. And in a sense, if you remember, Putin's statement after the fall of Damascus was odd. And I remember having a number of discussions on social media where people were saying, but it's irony, he's mocking them. Because remember, he said something along the lines of, Al-Qaeda has reformed. So, there's no problem with them now. And everyone was sort of saying, no, he's taking the P. He doesn't really mean this. He's mocking the West
criticizing.
and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what your
You can say it. Yeah, you can say
language rule.
You're fine.
And for me, this was a very odd statement to make. And then that was followed so quickly with this legitimization of the regime. And then what we saw was Israel lobbying Trump for Russia to maintain its bases in Syria. So while I agree with you that Jolani is to a large degree Erdogan's instrument of expansion, what's now happening, if you like, is Jolani's being pulled in all directions in the interest of every single power player inside Syria. And that includes Israel, right? And Israel is going to be, it's going to outweigh Turkey because Israel has the backing of Washington and it has the backing of Russia, by the way. As I've said, the relationship between Russia and Israel, Russia will never do anything that threatens Israel. Never. And that's one of the reasons why Russia, as one of the BRICS countries, Putin has never declared that what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide. They've maintained trade relations with Israel. They haven't economically boycotted Israel. Lavrov has even basically said that what Israel's goals against Hamas are the same as Russia's goals in Ukraine. So
Yes,
we have to understand this relationship between Russia and Israel. It's very important. And we shouldn't downplay it because Russia will protect that relationship at all costs. And we can talk more about this. So in a sense, what is Jolani doing? He's effectively trying to keep all his sponsors happy, which is going to be a very difficult job long term. And not only does he have to keep all his sponsors happy, he has to maintain the loyalty of his Takfiri forces. So if he's seen to pivot too far towards Israel or normalization with Israel, he's going to piss off the more extremist fanatical factions within his forces, which include ISIS. If he basically goes too far towards Russia, the same thing. So he has to keep this weird balance, and that's why you're seeing all of this maneuvering. But ultimately, what is the goal? The goal is to partition Syria, and Russia is part of that goal. Because what is Russia seeing? It's seeing an opportunity to not only consolidate its position on the coast. It's already rebuilding its forces there. It's bringing in more equipment. This is its launch pad to Africa. And Africa is the biggest goal for Russia. And to lose its base in Syria, it can't, because then it would be entirely reliant on Turkey to use Turkish airspace and Turkish facilities to be able to access Africa, right? It can't afford to lose this base. So now what you're seeing, in my opinion, is the coming to the surface of the close relationship between Israel and Russia, and Russia's opportunity to prevent Erdogan's expansion into Syria. Because what happens every time Turkey tries to expand into Syria? Israel bombs it. We've seen this multiple times. As soon as Turkey tries to provide weapons to Jolani or to build back up the military bases that Israel destroyed back in December 2024, it completely devastated Syrian military capability, air defense, naval forces, and so on. And Turkey has been trying to build that back up on behalf of Jolani, but they've not been allowed to, because every time they go beyond their border of Aleppo and into central Syria, they're bombed by Israel, right? So Israel and Russia are focused on containing Turkey. But Russia is also focused on basically returning to the position it had under Assad, which is to consolidate its position on the coast. And there is talk I've seen, and I agree with it, that part of the discussion with Jolani was for Jolani's Takfiri forces to withdraw from the coast, for Russia to be given control of the coastal area and the ability to bomb the Takfiri forces in that area. So what does that mean? Russia takes full control of the coastal area and potentially partitions it off as an Alawite state. By doing that, it pushes France out of the picture because France historically had the mandate in the coastal area. It had the mandate of the Alawite state, right? And it's been desperately trying to invest into, maintain its investment in Latakia port. So in my opinion, Russia is maneuvering for this. It's maneuvering to take that big piece of the Syrian cake totally under its control as a protectorate. At the same time, it's increasing its presence in Qarmishli in the northeast. And even Jolani is saying it'll be marvelous if Russia will go back and police the south and wait for it, prevent Israeli expansion. This is nonsense. Russia's not going to do anything to prevent Israeli expansion. It's best friends with Israel, right? What it is going to do is to provide the same service to Israel as it provided under President Assad, which is to prevent a Takfiri presence or to prevent the rise of any possible Syrian resistance factions, because we have been seeing some attacks on Israeli forces that have come into Syrian territory in the south, particularly in Quneitra and in Dara. Mm-hmm. And why is this important? Because basically Israel wants control of all of the south and Sweda, where we've seen, this is where it gets very complex, where Jolani had the meeting in Baku with the Israeli officials, and immediately after the massacre of the Druze in Sweda began. So this was clearly orchestrated. Jolani was clearly in on it. He weaponized the tribal factions against the Druze factions, but even his own HTS forces and ISIS forces joined in the slaughter of the Syrian Druze in Sweda. And what did that do? It opened the door to Israel to come in as a protector of the Druze in Sweda and take control. Russia will help this because this will enable Israel's David's corridor to go up the eastern flank of Syria, so the border with Iraq and Jordan, link with the Kurdish factions in the northeast, which gives them full control of Syrians' southern and eastern border, right? So what I'm trying to say is the discussions in Moscow, in my opinion, one is that Jolani must be aware that he's not going to be allowed to have his military rebuilt by Turkey. This is perfectly clear to him right now. And much, much earlier this year, he had a conversation in Idlib where he was telling people basically, no, it's fine, we'll get weapons from Russia.
Was he?
And
was he?
And he actually said this in an interview with the New York Times. He said basically Trump has washed his hands of them. He's not going to be providing weapons. They can go to Turkey or Russia.
He thinks that the Russian military is going to be giving them weapons?
Yeah, but they probably will. If they can make money out of this, they probably will.
I don't get the sense that Israel is going to allow him to get weapons from either Russia or
from he can have small weapons. Why can he have small weapons? He's not going to be given air defense. He's not going to be given heavy artillery, but he'll be given small weapons. Why? Because if at any point Israel or Turkey decide that, more likely Israel, decide that they want to use Jolani to attack the resistance factions in Iraq and Lebanon, they have the weapons to do it, but not the weapons that can be turned on Israel, right?
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's a tweaking point of view. So is it possible that what we're seeing is a fallback position? Because Russia, in its relationship with Assad, it already had access to Africa in the way that it wanted access to Africa. Its bases were safe. They didn't have to have all of this to take place. You've had a relationship with someone that went back for decades. It just seems
they did, but they were frustrated for multiple reasons. They were frustrated that Assad wasn't basically in agreement with the whole Astana policy of redrawing the constitution. He'd been extremely stubborn on that, right? Secondly, he'd refused any meeting with Erdogan to resolve issues. And his point was, why would I talk to Erdogan until he withdraws from Syrian territory and withdraws the terrorists that he's basically funding and arming, which are the Syrian National Army, which were previously the Free Syrian Army, that are basically under Turkish control. And they're now the ones that are occupying the north and the majority of Aleppo. He wasn't fully doing what I think Russia wanted him to do, which was to expel Iran and Hezbollah completely. Remember, back in 2018, there was a bit of a row between Iran and Russia because Russia was pushing Assad to do that back then. So that was back in 2018, right?
Why was Russia? Why was Russia pushing him to expel Iran? Both of these countries were working together in order to beat back the terrorists the first time around.
I think because Russia basically wanted the share of the largest share of influence in Syria. Iran was seen as a threat because if Iran expanded into Syria, this is how I believe Russia saw it, and I was told this by a number of Russian officials over the years that I was in Syria, that they saw Iran not so much as an ally but as a competitor in Syria. You know, we have to remember this is real politics. This isn't even though Russia has now the strategic partnership with Iran, it still doesn't have a mutual defense clause in it. So in other words, if Israel goes to war again with Iran, Russia is not physically going to come in and help Iran, but it will do that for North Korea. It has a mutual defense pact with North Korea, where they will come to each other's defense if either country is attacked. They don't have that clause in the agreement with Iran. And they need Iran to some degree. They need Iran for the north-south trade corridor, which of course is now under threat with the Turkish-Israeli-US expansion into Armenia and Azerbaijan and the Zangezur corridor. So that's why Russia is now negotiating more enthusiastically with the Taliban in Afghanistan, right? So what I'm saying is it all makes sense when you look at it from a realistic perspective, and when you take the ideological content out of the discussion. That's how I tend to view it. In a sense, I understand what Russia is doing. Whoever caused the loss of Assad, that's another very complicated conversation. But however it happened, ultimately Russia had to make sure that they maintained their presence in Syria.
Yeah.
And so if that means legitimizing and recognizing a Takfiri government, clearly for Russia, that's not a problem. And I just want to come back to this point on the terrorists, the Takfiris that are under Jolani's command. There's a huge number. I mean, numbers vary, but back in, I think it was 2014, there was something like 14,000 Chechens among the Takfiris in Syria, and also the Uyghurs from China. So China and Russia have an interest in keeping the terrorists inside Syria, right? They don't want them to come back. Between 1999 and 2014, there were multiple massive terrorist attacks by Chechen groups in Russia. And Putin actually said, we would rather fight them in Syria than fight them in St. Petersburg or Moscow.
Of course, right.
Right. So the containment of those Chechen elements is also very, very important to Russia. And even in, I think it was 2014, there were reports, and those have been confirmed, that Russia was effectively facilitating the transit of Chechen terrorists without visa through Turkey and into Syria. So effectively, they were saying, okay, go to Syria, fight with the Takfiris there, and let the Syrian army die fighting them. I'm putting it very bluntly, but that's effectively
Yeah,
the
yeah.
case. Russia didn't come in until 2015, right? The Chechen Takfiris were leaving from 2014, 2013 onwards and entering Turkey with no visa and coming into Syria.
Syria.
And it's not only the Chechens, it's the Uzbekistanis, the Tajikistanis, the Dagestanis, and so on that make up. I mean, generally, I think the Takfiri forces are around 40% foreign Takfiri. So it's a huge number.
There was a conversation, I think it was Kavork yesterday when he was talking about this.
Mm.
And he was pointing out, like, if you can't maintain your friends, you're going to lose friends. It was something to that effect. He was giving this breakdown. And look, all of us, be it me, you, Laith, all of us feel some kind of way about the fall of Syria. And Laith was making this very strident point about betrayal, in a sense, where it feels like a betrayal. Is that the way it's understood in the region?
Yes. I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm here in Lebanon. I know how many analysts, let's say, on the side of the resistance feel about it. And in Iran, I mean, there were certain members of the Iranian military command who were very blunt about what happened, even down to the fact that Iran was trying to send reinforcements, and apparently it had been agreed between Assad and Putin. And at the last minute, Putin prevented them landing at Haimamim. And they were over Iraq, and they had to go back because the US was threatening to shoot the plane down.
Right.
All of this was made very clear by members of the Iranian command shortly after the fall of Syria. And so, yes, of course, there's a feeling of betrayal, enormously so. I mean, to see this footage of Jolani, and it's not only Jolani, it's his entire entourage. I mean, Asad al-Shaibani, the foreign minister, was one of the co-founders of Al-Qaeda in Syria. The name escapes me. Musaf al-Kahaf, the defense minister, committed atrocities against Syrian civilians. The head of intelligence, who worked very close, Anas al-Khattab, who was one of Jolani's henchmen in Idlib, but also very heavily connected to Turkey, to the Turkish intelligence. And notice there on the left-hand side, his brother, Hussein al-Shara, who was educated in Russia and who has, in my opinion, been instrumental in this normalization with Russia. He's played a very important role in this. But effectively, yeah, I mean, you have there Lavrov, you have the foreign ministry, and look at this place.
It's full state.
Right? This isn't a side room. You know,
this is a full state.
This is full pomp and ceremony. It's quite extraordinary. And it's, even though we were fully aware of, and I do consider it a betrayal, I consider it a major betrayal. And I go back to the statement that Putin made immediately after the fall, where he blamed it entirely on the collapse or the surrender of the Syrian Arab Army. I would contest that, because the Syrian Arab Army that had fought and died for 14 years to defend Syria, against hordes of Takfiris that were being sent in by, I don't know, more than 80 countries in the world, funded by some of the wealthiest countries in the world, like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, would suddenly surrender. They were betrayed. They were betrayed internally, but in my opinion, they were also betrayed externally. They were not fully prepared. And whether this was mismanagement on the Russian side, and again, we have to remember that there was actually not a huge Russian military force on the ground.
Right.
They had used Wagner. No, well, they'd used the Air Force, yes. But they'd used Wagner, basically, as a subcontractor. from 2015, it was Wagner that basically liberated much of Syrian territory. And I find it quite interesting. And again, this is speaking to Russian military officials and so on that were on the ground in Syria and are now back in Russia, who have the opinion that had Wagner not been taken out of Syria in around 2021, this wouldn't have happened. So why were Wagner removed? Why were Wagner taken out? And I don't know if you maybe don't remember or weren't aware of, but in 2018, there was a major incident. There was a major clash between the Russian military and Wagner, in the sense that Wagner, Hasham, the Battle of Hasham in 2018, when Wagner and Syrian army forces tried to retake one of the oil fields from the American forces.
Oh,
and
I don't know that.
According to Wagner, the Russian command were fully aware. They were bombed by the Americans. They were slaughtered by the Americans in trying to do this. And the Russian command didn't come to their help at all. And afterwards, when Prigozhin was really angry about this because he considered that his forces and the Syrian forces had been sacrificed, the Russian command denied all knowledge, basically. So they kind of washed their hands of Wagner and said, no, this was a rogue operation. We didn't know anything about it. And so to a degree, there's many questions that I have more than answers in some ways. But to a degree, the relationship that we now see between Russia and Israel, for me, is extremely telling. Because this now means that Russia is entirely collaborating with Israel in order to maintain its presence in Syria. It's not really Jolani. Jolani is to a degree an instrument, but they can manipulate him. And we have to remember this isn't the first of the meetings. Shaibani has been to Moscow. They've had multiple meetings and conversations prior to this. And the other thing, which is important, is that Jolani is pushing for the extradition of Assad. Now, this will be, if Russia capitulates on this,
that's betrayal.
In my opinion, that's the end of their relationship with the entire resistance axis. Because how can countries like Venezuela or Iran or any of these countries that are genuinely resistant against the imperialist axis, or the Zionist bloc, as I call them, how would they be able to trust Russia? They can't, right? I mean, I'm not saying he's going to do it. But the fact that this subject is still on the table and it keeps coming back to the table, and now there are actual court cases to prosecute Assad inside Damascus that are being brought by lawyers under Jolani's tutelage, of course. And the statements that they're putting out are not exactly negative about Russia's reaction. In their opinion, it's just going to take time. So, okay, that could be propaganda from their perspective. And everyone is telling me, no, Russia would never betray someone that they've given asylum to and so on. It depends, in my opinion, cynically, it depends what the incentive is.
Vanessa, we're going to have to end this. And I'm going to have to bring you back because I want to continue this conversation. I am riveted by this. My mind is blown. And my mind is blown because it's a workable point of view, right? It's like how you see something and how you weigh it. And somebody can say, well, look, I weigh this differently. And this is why I weigh this differently. And they give you an explanation of why they weigh it differently. And look, you've been in that region. You have talked to all sorts of people in this region, Russian, Syrian, Iranian, otherwise.
Yeah.
That is.
And I just want to make one thing clear, if I can. I'm not, how can I put this? There are many Russians, for example, that were in Syria prior to 2018, who were against many of the policies from the Russian regime and from Putin in Syria. So it's not like a homogenous policy. There are many people, even in Russia, in my opinion, that are against what has happened in Syria and is happening in Syria, just to be very clear.
This is disturbing. This is very disturbing to me. I have to have you back, and I would love if you come back next week to continue this conversation.
Of course, I would love to.
Vanessa Beeley. She is an international investigative journalist, and you can find her work on Substack.com. You can also find her work on YouTube under Vanessa Beeley. Thank you for this really great breakdown. A fantastic breakdown. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Jamal.
Absolutely. All right. That is a disturbing breakdown. Esteban Carrillo. How you doing, man? You doing okay today?
Hey, Jamal. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here. And I was just listening to the last few minutes of Vanessa's intervention. And brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff and disturbing as well.
She is a fantastic journalist, but Jesus, that is a withering point of view.
Yeah.
Like, as she points out, she was there in Damascus as it was falling. Like, grab my dog, grab my clothes, and get out. And she had lived in Syria for God knows how long. I've known Vanessa for a while. That was my first time catching up with her in a very long time. And the interview ran late, so thank you for this. And I'm going to
No
push
worries at all.
Dimitri
No worries at all.
further into the thing too. Esteban Carrillo. He is an Ecuadorian journalist currently writing for The Cradle. Previously with Tell Us Our English. The Cradle is a fantastic magazine. I oftentimes when I'm talking about DD geopolitics, I often bring up The Cradle because both of you guys have really good work in regards to the continuity of stories that you come up with. And oftentimes those stories are solid and it allows a basis of research to continue. So you guys do fantastic work.
Thank you so much, Ramon. Thank you so much.
You sent me a video of a bomb that went off in Ecuador.
Mhm.
Now, what's wild about this, we've been watching Donald Trump scream bloody murder about drugs coming out of Venezuela and murdering people left and right, including a failed murder attempt that recently took place. And yet, what is going on in Ecuador is deeply disturbing. Give us an understanding of this. What happened?
Well, essentially what's happening in Ecuador over the past month, it's a popular protest that the government has not been able to quell. Discontent. Currently, Ecuador is essentially handed over to the IMF. Anything the IMF asks, we said yes. This has been the case for the past 8 years since the neoliberal regimes took power. We have, and this has kind of blown up over the past several weeks, especially with the government of Daniel Noboa. For those of you who might remember, I know Ecuador is pretty, unfortunately, is really inconsequential when it comes to geopolitics. But we have a Miami-born president who is he's a U.S. citizen. For all intents and purposes, our president is a U.S. citizen. He defends the interests of the United States in Latin America, and has been implemented, heavier, harsher austerity measures and police repression, military repression. So this all kind of came to a head. I think it was Wednesday when this car bomb went off in the middle of a populated area in Ecuador's main port city, which at this point is essentially, run by the drug cartels. Ecuador is really the country where most of the cocaine that leaves for the Europe in particular, it's being shipped from. I don't know if you saw, like just a few weeks ago, Russia at the St. Petersburg port, they seized the largest shipment of cocaine ever in their, in their history. It was like, I forget the exact number, but it was like hundreds of tons of cocaine inside of banana boxes from Ecuador. So,
it's sent to Kiev. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Volodymyr said, the same guy who planned the Nord Stream bombing, right? According to German prosecutors. So yeah, essentially this is what happens, right? You have a month-long protest. Earlier in the day, heavy repression. I didn't send you those videos, Jamal, but the repression that they did against indigenous people in particular, because, you must understand, like just like Bolivia or Peru, Ecuador has a very, very significant indigenous population. Yes. Who are the most affected, right? Because these are the field workers, these are the people who transport, the fields feed the city, the farm, what do you call it? Never mind. Well, they feed the city, right? So they protest because by slashing diesel subsidies, by implementing austerity measures, what they do is they make their life even more impossible at a time in which security is essentially non-existent in the country, in which education it's been destroyed, in which hospitals. Jamal, if you go to a public hospital in Ecuador today, they will ask you to even buy the aspirin, the gauze, the implements. If you need surgery, if you need anything, they will tell you, come back, buy everything, in the pharmacies outside, and then come back here. and the doctor will, I guess, do something if they ever get to you, right? So it's a complete devastating situation what's happening in Ecuador. So the people, they go out to protest. Noboa sends thousands upon thousands of troops to these towns, to these indigenous towns. They've, bust heads. They have killed at least 3 protesters so far with bullets, by shooting them, or where one of them was asphyxiated because they dropped so many tear gas bombs, canisters. The entire cities were covered, in tear gas clouds. And at the day that this repression is the most violent, with police and army just cracking down on everyone and everything that moves, hours later, a car bomb in Guayaquil, allegedly an attempt on the life of the president, because the car bomb goes off outside of the building where his aunt supposedly lives, which the Noboa family, again, the richest family in Ecuador. You're talking about an empire, they're billionaires. So this is not the first time. I think you must remember a couple of years ago, you had me on to talk about when they took the TV station. Remember when those kids walked in with the guns and they took control of the TV station? Jamal, to this day, it's not known who was actually behind it. It's been 2 years, and there's no information who was behind it, what was the motive, what were the demands. Nobody was hurt, thankfully, that day, but it did open the doors for Noboa to declare an internal armed conflict, and then to declare drug cartels, 22 drug cartels, drug gangs, as terrorist groups. In the past 2 years, not a single one of those 22 drug gangs have been dismantled, not a single one. And you had one after the other, drug lords, one after the other, escape prison with the help of the military, with the help of the police. The latest one, there's video of him literally walking out, dressed as a soldier, with the full gear, escorted by actual members of the military, of the armed forces. So on the one hand, you have a narco state. Ecuador, narco state, completely. Cocaine being shipped in the banana boxes that are shipped by the company of the president. The Noboa company is the one shipping these boxes of bananas filled with cocaine. And a police that is non-existent, army that is non-existent. There's no radars in the port, not scanners in the ports. There's no radars in our borders. It's a complete free-for-all. We are, at this point, I think we're reaching 7,000 homicides so far this year. Just this year, Ecuador is more dangerous today than Haiti, is more dangerous than the only country that has a higher homicide rate than Ecuador in the world is Jamaica. We are number 2. We have 5 of the most dangerous cities in the entire world. So,
Esteban, when I was there,
go ahead. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. Go ahead.
This is very depressing to me. When I was in Quito, this was not. Ecuador, when I went, was one of the safest cities in South America. Like literally one of the safest cities. It is a very depressing thing to hear that this is where it is now. 7,000 homicides.
Yeah, so far this year. I mean, every year is worse. Every year is more. And just to what I was getting at is just that at the same time that you have police cracking down on protesters, with the just completely geared up, with the trucks and the weapons and everything, helicopters. When it's about cracking down on drug gangs, they're nowhere to be seen. They're literally nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found. They are just non-existent. They're only there to crack down on protests. And this is not shocking in any neoliberal regime. We have seen this before. We saw it in Bolivia during the coup years. We're seeing it in Peru as well. In Peru, very heavy protests, and they just killed a protester over the past day, the police as well. In Argentina, remember a few months ago, they cracked down on retirees, on senior citizens. The police cracked down on them. So it's just like this tale of what is happening across Latin America, while Donald Trump is claiming that Venezuela is the one that is exporting the drugs. Although all UN agencies, the UN Agency for Drugs and the other NGOs have shown with data that only about 5% of the drugs that enter the U.S. come from Venezuela's shores, come from the Caribbean Sea, while over 86% come from Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru. So it's very concerning what's happening in Ecuador, because it goes to show you that what this Plan Condor 2.0, right? This expansion of the Monroe Doctrine on steroids truly means. Because you have Venezuela that is essentially about to be invaded, it's just a matter of time. You have Argentina, which at this point is being just sunk in debt, just completely sunk in debt that they're never going to be able to pay off. And you have a country like Ecuador that is under the control of a narco government, a narco state that uses the police freely to repress protests, to kill protesters, and then, more likely than not, sets off false flag attacks like this car bomb, like the taking of the TV station a couple of years ago, to pursue their political goals and to persecute political opponents. Because here's the kicker about what's happening in Ecuador. In less than a month, Ecuadorians are heading back to the polls. Ecuador has been living a prolonged electoral process for the past 5 years. We are headed back to the polls for a referendum in which Daniel Noboa essentially wants to redraft the constitution. He wants to redraft the constitution entirely to fit his vision of governance, which is we take everything and screw everyone else.
For some reason, Noboa, that name is familiar to me. When I was there was, I don't think it was a presidential election, but I remember having a conversation with the hotel owner. And he was pointing out, he says, yeah, because Ecuador uses dollars. At the time, the guy who was running for election, it was like a Democrat and a Republican. They said that the Republican was going to win. He said it was the richest man in Ecuador. We may be talking about the same person.
I think you're talking about his dad. His dad ran five times, and he lost 5 times. And his son, oh my God, man, like this dude is it feels like he's based his entire model of government on The Prince, the Machiavellian book.
Yes.
Like he truly is a macabre operator. He is a sociopath. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, honestly, the only achievement that we had that this strike has actually gotten so far is to make sure that Noboa stayed in the country for a whole month. Because in the past 2 years of his government, the man was essentially gone the entire time. He was always on a trip somewhere. He was always taking pictures for his Instagram. Meanwhile, the country burning down, the homicides going through the roof, the hospitals with no medicine, blackmail, Jamar, like people, school children are being blackmailed to go to school, to be safe. The gangs are blackmailing teachers, are blackmailing school children, are blackmailing parents. You got to pay me $50 a week, or if not, we'll kill you. It's an everyday thing today.
It has evolved to that degree. Meaning the gangs have become instantiated in the country.
It's somehow as bad, or sometimes maybe even worse than the situation in Haiti, which is, unfortunately, a crisis that is often forgotten historically. But Ecuador is truly, right now, the perfect example of what happens when you not just shrink the state, when you disappear the state. Because that's the neoliberal agenda, right? Like a big state, we need to shrink it. It needs to be efficient. It needs to be this. It needs to be that. They've shrunk it so much that it's disappeared. It's gone.
It sounds like they didn't just shrink it; they're using it for the drugs.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like it's gotten to the point where the gangs have been almost like a part of government itself. It's very strange.
They are. You have provinces, you have cities in which the local administrations are in actual business with the drug cartels. What do I mean by that? They they're contractors. When, I don't know, for road building, let's say, the contractor is a drug cartel, is an actual member of a drug gang. Remember that before Noboa, the reason Noboa is in power currently is because a couple of years ago there was the snap elections, when banker Guillermo Lasso called for snap elections because he was also completely inefficient at his job. So he called snap elections. And the reason he called snap elections was because he was facing impeachment charges over an investigation that showed that his brother-in-law was in bed with the Albanian mafia. The Albanian mafia are the group that controls the cocaine flow into Europe through the port of Antwerp in Brussels. And they were essentially working with the brother-in-law of the president to name the heads of ministries, in particular the agricultural ministry, which at this point is essentially another drug cartel. Like the banana boxes that live with the cocaine come from companies that have been given expansions of the quota of how much they can export per year by the agriculture ministry itself. The corruption, it's so deep, it runs so deep, it's so profound, and it's so as you said, you're completely correct. It's not just that they disappeared the state, it's that they took control of it to turn it into a drug organization. Exactly what they say that Venezuela is, when they say Nicolás Maduro is actually the head of the cartel of the sons, is what they call it. That's the truth in Ecuador. In Ecuador, the government is an actual drug cartel. And there's evidence of this. And there's there's been investigations into this. And anytime a new journalist and somebody is brave enough to look into this and uncover some new piece of the puzzle, they immediately receive death threats and they have to flee the country. At this point, we have many journalists who have had to flee the country because of death threats. And in the meantime, it's just they try to cover everything up by blaming the opposition, as they always do, right? Like they try to portray the actual opposition to this government as the drug cartel, as the terrorists. The protesters over the past month, they have been called day in and day out terrorists funded by drug cartels. It's, that inversion that Zionists are so good at, right? The inversion of we are the victims and the Palestinians are the aggressors. It's the same thing. It's the same agenda being applied.
Every accusation is a confession.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that is disturbing. Is there political opposition in Ecuador, or is because the problem is the moment that the government loses, you may have a government that, again, when I was there, Ecuador was safe, and
it was the second safest country in Latin America for several years.
I mean, I had a fantastic time there. People were nice as can be. I mean, this is kind of why I focus on these stories, especially places I've been that I really liked. The moment that the government leaves, though, and you allow the gangs in, they maintain their space, meaning they're not going to want to leave, even if you could get a political figure in. And they nearly murdered that other political figure, then blamed it on the left-wing candidate. I distinctly remember that.
They actually did. They actually murdered. They killed when the leftist was leading, when the left party was about to win in a first round, because in Ecuador we have, the first round and then maybe a runoff if you don't get more than 50% of the votes. The leftist candidate, all the polls were showing that she was leading with enough points to win in the first round. So what happens? One of the candidates gets murdered, and it's one of the candidates who is actually, it has been revealed since then, he was a DEA informer. He was a DEA informer. He was a U.S. Embassy employee. Yes, he was a DEA informer that was also in bed with some of the drug cartels, because there's no clean informer. There's never been, I'm an informer for the DEA because I want to, save my country or anything. It's because, I want to avoid jail time. So he gets killed. He gets, shot in the head after leaving a campaign event. Again, there's still, to this day, this was over 2 years ago, no culprit. No one has been actually...
Oh, no prosecutions for this.
No prosecution. All of the people who were arrested in the days following his murder, they arrested about 8 people. All except for one were killed in prison, were found dead in prison. And what do you call it? Whoever was behind it, whoever actually planned it, to this day, there is no information. And the only information that there has been is, as you said, Jamar, to blame the leftists, to be like, oh, it's them, it's the left-wing party because they're all a bunch of terrorists, or a bunch of drug cartels. And the wife of this candidate just a few months ago came out to say that in the days following his murder, she was pressured by the attorney general at the time, who is never mind, I'll not get into that right now. But she came out to say that the attorney general at the time pressured her to blame Rafael Correa personally.
Are you serious?
Yes. She said, they called me, the wife of Villavicencio, who's the candidate who was killed, and said, the attorney general called me and told me, you need to go on the news and say that it was Rafael Correa behind the murder, because we have someone who told us this, like some witness, some person who was involved in this murder. There's no actual evidence. And then since then, she has come out to say she lied to me, because it's been 2 years since the murder of my husband, and there's been absolutely no movement to find out the actual culprit. So when they told me it was a Rafael Correa, it was just to manipulate the elections.
They
So
are still
yeah,
fucking with Correa.
a couple of
All of this over Julian Assange.
the car bomb that went off a couple of days ago in Guayaquil, hours after it went off, who do you think they were blaming, Jamar?
They were blaming Correa. Are you serious?
I wish I was joking. I swear to God, I wish it was just like, it's not. It's been 8 years in which the one president in Ecuador that actually, reduced poverty, reduced
Crime.
exactly, reduced crime significantly, whose government was awarded by the U.S. for reducing the flow of cocaine out of Ecuador, who was recognized across the world for having one of the most progressive constitutions, is to this day the one that is blamed for everything, absolutely everything. For the protest, he's behind them. For a car bomb, he's behind them. Assassination of a political opponent, he's behind them. Like everything, and this is a man who has been stripped of his, in Ecuador, they give the former presidents, the lifetime stipend, like salary they receive. He's been stripped of that. He's been stripped of any security that he could have as a former president. He's been, prosecuted. He has like dozens of cases against him in Ecuador. He's been condemned in absentia. He for a psychic influence. Remember that? Like the reason they want to jail him, and this is the same attorney general who told the wife of this candidate that it was Correa who killed his husband, who ordered the hit on his husband a few years before when they condemned Correa. She went on TV and she said, "We don't have evidence that Rafael Correa actually took any, payments or corruption or anything, but he exerted psychic influence, Jamal. He exerted psychic influence so that all of his underlings were taking, payments under the table, etc." It's if it wasn't as devastating as it has been, it would be hilarious. It would be a comedy. It's like somebody make a comedy out of this because it's very funny. But the reality is so much different because Ecuador it's a river of blood. It's as bad as Colombia was during the years of Pablo Escobar. And like I said, at this point, only Haiti in Latin America, only Haiti and Jamaica are possibly facing a crisis that are a bit worse than Ecuador.
Esteban, this is disturbing. I thank you for giving us a breakdown on this. I mean, sometimes these things get out of our eyeshot.
Yeah.
Thank you for hitting me up on this and sending me the car bomb. I hadn't seen it. I had been so focused on what was been taking place in the U.S. and Gaza and Russia.
No, I feel like, and just I don't want to extend myself too long, Jamal, but I just want to say very quickly, the U.S. is coming for South America. The U.S. is coming for South America. Like, this is not just about Venezuela. This is about the entire region. The whole war on terror that destroyed West Asia is being transplanted. They're moving it to Latin America. And I feel like we are simply not ready. Our countries are not prepared for what's coming. And many people are simply not seeing the scale of the destruction that awaits us. Because if it's not war, it's again, what's happening to Argentina, being sunk in an unpayable debt. And those are going to be our only two options moving forward, unless the entire continent, all of Latin America, all of South America, joins together to fight against this onslaught. If we don't do that, we're screwed.
Esaban Carrillo, he is a Ecuadorian journalist, currently writing for The Cradle. He was previously with Telesur English. And again, The Cradle is a fantastic outlet. Esteban, thank you for this, man. I didn't see you in a while, so I'm glad to see you. Thank you for this.
I'm really glad as well.
We'll talk you be later. Safe, okay?
You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. And I see my man in the background to clear the air, Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri, we keep meeting like this, man. How you doing?
Good, man. I know it is Jamaro, but I seem to cause your guest to...
I don't know what it is. Do you realize that has happened twice in the entirety of the show history, even going back for like 10 years, and you were the only person. Look, the KJ one, I don't know what that's about, to be bluntly honest. That one is still weird to me because what you said was just innocuous. Daniel is a true believer, so he is being earnest in what he thinks about this stuff. But thank you for coming on to clear the air about this. And Dimitri Lascaris, lawyer, journalist, activist from Montreal, Quebec. He runs the show Reason to Resist. He's a damn good friend of the show. To give a little background to people who may not have seen it, I had a guest on the show, Daniel Lazar. Daniel Lazar heard a tail end of something that you said. I don't think he heard the tail end of it correctly, but whatever. And he calls your take on it foolish. This is in relation to saying the Palestinians is ultimately going to carry the day, that the Palestinian is ultimately going to win. It doesn't seem like it. It's a dark day, but this is going to ultimately be a victory. Israel is going to fail. He didn't necessarily agree with that take, called the take foolish. So he was willing to debate you any moment, even went so far as to say, guys like that don't debate. And I was like, what do you mean guys like that? You don't even know him. I was like, what do you mean guys like who? I sent him the thing that you pointed out saying, look, you're willing to have this conversation, have this debate. I've been running, so I haven't had the opportunity to check my messages. I did think he sent a response. So maybe this is something that's going to take place. I wanted you to be able to respond to the video, though. You've watched it, you've seen it. And one last point, you sent me polling of what Palestinians actually think on the ground. Thank you for that. And I've went through this entire document. Let's start at the beginning first before we get to this. You watched the video. Give me your thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you for, again, giving me the opportunity so graciously to come on your program and to respond. And just to be fully accurate, he didn't just call me a fool, he called me an idiot to boot. And that came right out of the gate. Before I address his argument, I'm going to reiterate right here and now. I started laughing when he said, oh, I don't think he's going to want to debate me. I issued a debate about 5 months ago, Jamal, to the 25 most influential and respected and affluent Zionist lawyers in Canada on the question of whether Israel is committing genocide. Some of these people know me personally, and all of them know who I am, even if they haven't actually met me, I assure you, because of my work in the legal profession in Canada. I sent it to their inboxes. I went to the trouble of finding their emails and sent it to them, and not one of them accepted my challenge in 4 months. So this guy coming on your show and go, oh, he's not going to want to debate me. Here it is, Daniel. I'm telling you right now in front of all of Jamal's audience, I would love to debate you. I would love to debate you. And in fact, I sent you a message last night over Twitter in response to some Zionist nonsense you were spewing in reply to a very troubling tweet by Treaty Parsi. This is what happened, by the way. Treaty Parsi put out a video of dozens of Israeli women dancercising to a song called May Your Villages Burn. Okay.
That's grotesque.
Okay.
That's grotesque.
And Daniel Lazar's response to this was, please, they do the same thing on the other side. That was his response. So I then replied to him and said, I accept your challenge for a debate. I still haven't received his response. So let's just get that out of the way right now.
I got a response from Daniel on this. And I think he's down to have this conversation.
Fantastic.
I've had a conversation. Daniel and I have gotten into a fight over the Israel thing once before. We were not supposed to be talking about that. The conversation we were talking about was, I think it was the government shutdown and the way that it operated. And you heard the tail part of what you and wanted to add into that. There is nobody. Look, if I feel some kind of way, this is a normal Finkelstein argument, right? If I hate you, but I hate you because you've been killing me, I'm not wrong for that. Like when you've murdered hundreds of thousands of people, women and children, in this kind of ritualistic way, and your entire society agrees with it, I'm not wrong for feeling some kind of way and hating your guts for you being that demonic. That is different than Israelis making videos or making movies or songs about their genocide, them committing a genocide. Those things are not equal. Those things are not a one-to-one. I hope that's gross. That's
you
very gross.
Don't need to persuade me. And by the way, the Zionists like Lazar exaggerate the level of hatred on the Palestinian side. And furthermore, this grotesque disparity in violence doesn't start on October 7th. It started with the Nakba, okay? The Israelis began to steal Palestinian land in Gaza and the West Bank, the occupation, in 1967, Jamal. That was more than 20 years before Hamas was created. So please, Mr. Lazar, stop boring us with your Hamas justification for Israel's satanic behavior. This has been going on since the founding of Israel, even beforehand. And I, frankly, I'm amazed at the fact that so few Palestinians have lashed out in this way, given what they've experienced. But let's move on to his argument. And I want to be clear, Jamal, I don't give a damn what Daniel Lazare thinks about me. I do take umbrage at him insulting me and mischaracterizing my position on your program, which I have great respect for. You have over 70,000 subscribers, lots of people watching this guy spew his Zionist crap. And that's really what concerns me, is his misstatements about the Palestinians. I couldn't care less about his opinion of me. So right out of the gate, he comes on, and this is what he says, okay? I took careful notes. I want to be sure that I got it right. Okay. After calling me a fool and an idiot, Lazare said to you that that I had characterized the fact that Hamas is currently waging deadly battles against criminal gangs in Gaza as a victory for the Palestinian people. That's what he said. He said,
I told him that wasn't true, by the way. I said that was nonsense.
Of course, and you were totally right. I mean, I don't know what part of the video he saw, but I've never said that in my entire life. In fact, I would be the first to admit that that's a tragedy for the Palestinian people, but it's a tragedy of Israel's making, because A, Israel created the famine, and B, Israel is arming these criminal gangs. And the fact that it's doing that has been widely acknowledged within the Israeli media. This is something that Lazare never mentioned. And just today, Jamal, the Washington Post put out an article. I encourage Mr. Lazare to go read it, where leaders of two of these criminal gangs said that they had received aid from Israel. Okay, they are taking aid from the state that is mass murdering and starving the children of Palestine. Okay, that tells you all you need to know about who these people are. Whatever you may think of Hamas, the idea that these people are fighting for the Palestinians is laughable, laughable. They are largely a monster of Israel's creation. But I regard that as a tragedy. The reason why I did say, as you've heard me say many times, I believe that the Palestinians are heading for victory and that the Israelis are heading for a strategic defeat. And I've said very clearly, repeatedly, what my reasons are for believing this. Number one, Israel's military, after using shocking, monstrous levels of violence against the civilian population of Gaza, has not defeated the armed resistance groups. And it's not just about Hamas. There are numerous armed resistance groups operating still, viable, armed, fighting on the ground in the Gaza Strip. They have imposed a severe price on Israel's hugely armed military, which is backed up by the entirety of NATO. The Israeli military is exhausted, it's demoralized, it's discredited, its weapon stocks are depleted, it has a crisis of PTSD, it has a crisis of suicide, and if it continues this genocide, which it seems hell-bent on doing, it's just going to get worse. And you have to take my word for it. You can listen to people like Scott Ritter, people come on your program, Lawrence Wilkerson, Larry Johnson, Douglas McGregor, and on and on. Military experts, intelligence experts are offering that view. Israel's military is in serious problem. They also have tens of thousands of reservists not showing up for duty. Okay, they have tens of thousands of soldiers who are permanently disabled. So they're in serious trouble there, number one. Number two, the economy is being battered. The cost of this war has been enormous. Israel's debt has been downgraded twice. Israel has withdrawn from the economy hundreds of thousands of able-bodied men, many of them highly educated. So that's having a serious cost. And if this continues, the cost is going to accumulate. Number three, and perhaps the most important reason I say Israel is headed for defeat and Palestinians for victory, is that Israel is probably the most detested state on God's green earth today. And even within the United States, you see plummeting polls and major figures from the MAGA movement who were previously fanatically pro-Israel coming out strong against Israel. We know who they are, okay? And Israel has legal problems. Its current prime minister and its former defense minister are indicted by the ICC. There's a genocide case pending against it in the International Court of Justice, which is almost certainly going to go badly for Israel. And I'm not being exhaustive here, Jamal. These are the reasons why I say that Israel is headed for defeat and Palestinians for victory. And if Mr. Lazare has an answer, he believes he has an answer to each and every one of the points that I've made, then I'm going to give him an opportunity to make his points. But don't misrepresent my opinions, Mr. Lazare. This is what Zionists do. They fabricate their opponent's position and then they ridicule it. You know, if a Zionist's lips are moving, chances are he's lying. Okay, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
And
Okay,
I
so
think,
that's not my position, Mr. Lazar.
yeah, he misrepresented what you said. And that's why I was very emphatic. Like, he didn't say that. And he was like, well, I said, he didn't say that. I heard exactly what he said. The Palestinians are going to be victorious in the end. This is the report that you gave me. And just so the audience can see it. Because one of the things that Daniel pointed out, him and I got into this back and forth over Abbas. And my point was, Abbas is hated. He's hated by his own people. He's a collaborator. Daniel didn't believe that. And for whatever reason, he believed that Abbas was liked a bit more. Now, my point of view comes from all of the people who come on the show who cover that as a journalist or are coming from that region, who are very clear Abbas is hated. I've never heard a person say a good word about Abbas. The data that you gave me makes several points. A, Gazans are human beings. Like, so their points of view diverge. Abbas is hated, deeply hated. There's a split in regards to how people view October 7th. In fact, I'm going to let you go through this. I don't want to take over the interview.
No problem.
But give me your take on this document that you sent and the perspectives that the Gazans have, and even people in the West Bank, who, as I point out, they're human beings. They care about themselves. They care about their lives. They care about resistance. This idea of giving up weapons is a no. They don't believe that giving up the hostages is going to stop Israel from murdering them further. Like, it's an interesting breakdown of polling of people who are actually in the area, West Bank and in Gaza. Give me your thoughts.
Okay, so first of all, I sent this to you because Lazar went on and on and on about the need for democracy in Palestine. I'm just like laughing my head off, because if he actually cared about democracy in Palestine, he would inform himself about the views of Palestinians. And this data is readily available. What I sent to you is just the most recent of many polls that have been done in the occupied territories by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research. You could find this poll doing a 30-second search with whatever search engine you use. That's how available and accessible it is. And I'm going to highlight some of the findings. I really recommend to people they look at this poll, because exactly what you said, Jamal. It shows that they're human beings. There's a diversity of opinion in their society. They're struggling with how to deal with this horrible situation. And there are a lot of surprises in there for people who care to look. So the poll found, first of all, let's recall that Mr. Lazar said that Hamas is a dictatorship, okay? And he said that if there were an election held today, Hamas would lose by a margin of 10-1. What drug is this man smoking? What drug is this man smoking? A serious political commentator looks at credible polling evidence and doesn't pull numbers out of his ass. Now, before I tell you what the number is in this poll, let's recall that in 2006, Hamas won the last legislative elections that were held in Palestine. They were certified to be free and fair by international election observers. They won by a substantial margin, over 70 seats, whereas Fatah, the party led by Mahmoud Abbas, won less than 40. So it was a clear victory. What did Israel do? Israel began to arrest the Hamas officials who had run for political office and won seats in the National Assembly of Palestine, and also arrested ministers in the government, in the newly appointed government, and withheld tens of millions of dollars from the Palestinian Authority, which was intended for the construction of infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. So it immediately did everything within its power with the backing of Western states. And by the way, Bush, he was urged not to allow Hamas to run, but Mahmoud Abbas was so confident that he would win that George Bush the Younger allowed Hamas to run, and it won, clearly, okay? So Israel squashed the democratic will of the Palestinian people. And Mr. Lazar doesn't have a word to say about this. For a man who's so deeply concerned about democracy in Palestine, you'd think he'd utter a peep of criticism of how Israel and its Western backers squashed the democratic will of the Palestinian people the last time they allowed them to have an election. So that's the background. So let's fast forward now, 19 years later. In May of this year, this organization I just mentioned does this poll. And a number of interesting questions. First, it asked, if there's a two-way race between the leader of Hamas and Mahmoud Abbas, how would you vote? And this is across both the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank. 68%, this is after almost 2 years of genocide, which Hamas's opponents have blamed on Hamas, okay? 68% said they would vote for the Hamas leader, and a mere 25% said they would vote for Abbas. They also asked, if there was a three-way race, with the leader of Hamas and the leader of Fatah, or the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and Marwan Barghouti, who is languishing under conditions amounting to torture in an Israeli dungeon for over 20 years, how would you vote? 50% said they would vote for Barghouti, 35% said for Hamas, and a lowly, pathetic, discreditable 11% said that they would vote for Mahmoud Abbas. Remember, what we were told by Lazar is that Hamas would lose by a margin of 10-1 if there were an election held today. The man's literally just, delusional. Now, they went on and they asked a number of other questions that are relevant to Lazar's claims. So right now, I just talked to you about the questions relating to leaders, like the president, who's going to be the big boss, okay? They then asked them, how would you vote in terms of political party? The largest percentage said 32% said they would vote for Hamas, followed by 21% for Fatah, and 12% selected third parties, and a very, very large proportion, 34%, said they would not support any of them or do not know. But a substantial plurality of the voters preferred Hamas. So again, they'd lose by 10-1. Are you kidding me? Then they asked, and I point this out because, I want to just talk about the protests, because the evidence, the so-called evidence that Lazar cited for his claim that Hamas would be annihilated if there was an election in Gaza today were the protests, the anti-Hamas protests in the Gaza Strip. This poll asked them about those protests. And you know what it found? It found that only 28% of the people living in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip supported the protests, and 67% opposed them. And the majority of them felt that these protests were being influenced by external actors.
Yep.
So to the extent that Mr. Lazar was suggesting, and he clearly was, that those protests reflect the majority opinion in Palestine, that's just complete and utter nonsense. Finally, Lazar, he didn't quite come out and say this, but I think that the strong implication of his argument was that armed resistance has been a disaster for the Palestinian people. And he even said he doesn't even like the word resistance. He thinks it's a word we shouldn't even use when we talk about these groups. And so this poll asked Palestinians what they think about the demand that Hamas disarm. 80% said they are opposed. So that means a lot of people who don't even support Hamas oppose the disarming of Hamas. 80% across the Gaza Strip and the West Bank said they oppose it, and only 17% said they support it. So in conclusion on this point, Jamal, I actually care about the democratic will. I'm not a fraud like Daniel Lazar, who says, oh, I care so deeply about democracy in Palestine, and then just pulls numbers out of his ass that are completely contradicted by the available polling evidence. That's why I pay attention to this and other polls. And I can say with a high level of confidence that he has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, that poll is damning. And it makes rational sense, right? You are being maligned for the last 70 years. You're being thrown in prison. You're being beaten. You are being occupied. Resistance seems like it's the most natural thing in the world. And as you point out in that poll, when they asked people, like, should Hamas be disarmed? They were very clear, no. And the reason is because they have no belief that Israel will stop killing them, even if they disarm. Meaning, from the point of view of the people who are on the ground, this will only get worse. Let's look at Lebanon for the moment, right? Israel has a ceasefire with Lebanon, and they're taking every opportunity to commit murder. They're taking every opportunity to effectively blow up the ability for them to rebuild. And they are trying to get the government of Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah, saying, hey, if you disarm, trust us. Everything will be great. It's like, do you think we're idiots? Hamas is in the same situation, or the Palestinians are in the same situation. If you disarm, do you believe that Israel will treat you somehow differently? And the answer is obvious, no. The answer is obvious.
The poll, I really want to, that's such an important point you made. And I think it bears pointing out that this poll found that the opposition to disarmament was higher in the West Bank than Gaza. Now, why might that be? Because the people in the West Bank are governed by a collaborator who turns its arms on Palestinians, not on the occupier.
Yes.
Okay? And look what's being done to them. They're being murdered. Their houses are being destroyed. Their olive trees are being uprooted. Their grazing land is being used by illegal settlers. They're being humiliated. They're not putting up armed resistance to any significant degree. It pales in comparison to what the resistance groups in Gaza are doing. And look how they're being treated. So they know from personal experience, if we lay down our weapons, these people, these mass murderers, are going to kill us with even greater ferocity. That's what they believe, and it's a rational belief.
Yeah. And it's a rational belief. Yeah, it's a completely rational belief. I mean, we have watched Israel murder hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. And we're not talking about them just going after Hamas. Like Donald Trump is making this argument like, yeah, they killed 70,000 Hamas. Okay, so you're telling every baby, every woman, every old man, meaning every last person that they murdered, they are making the argument that they're Hamas. I can show you footage of what Gaza looks like right now. It looks like a graveyard where they are still digging bodies out of the rubble, where those bodies are going to easily reach hundreds of thousands of people dead. What on earth would give any of the people on the ground the belief that if you give up your weapons, that Israel will treat you kindly and modestly? I don't know where that belief comes from. And neither do the people on the ground have it. I'm so glad you gave that poll, because that poll makes it very clear that Abbas, collaborator, it's the way he's seen. He would not win an election if the election was being held. Hamas would win that election if that election was being held. The people are split in regards to October 7th, but they're human beings, are rational. Many of them were concerned about attacks by Israel. So again, that's a rational behavior to be somewhat split on that. And the other gentleman, as you point out, that is languishing in prison, the exact reason that Israel is not letting him out is because of the results of that poll. Exactly. That he unifies the West Bank and he unifies Gaza. And the entire reason that Israel supported Hamas at the beginning is to create a deviation and a split between a political coalition between these two groups, between Gaza and the West Bank. They didn't want the political coalition. Yeah, that guy's languishing in prison as we speak. And they know for a flat fact, if they let him out, he will be a political lightning rod. And they don't.
He's not Hamas. And I'm sure Lazar knows this. Why doesn't Lazar, if he cares so much about democracy in occupied Palestine, criticize the Israeli government for refusing to release Marwan Barghouti, the most popular person in the political theater in occupied Palestine, who would readily defeat Hamas according to this poll if there was a three-way election? And there's one other thing I really, if you'll just indulge me, I think it's very important to say, this isn't at the end of the day about what you and I think about Hamas or any other political faction. This is about respecting the democratic will of the Palestinian people. Okay, if you actually believe in democracy, you'll accept their choice, which we have consistently refused to do. And we're in fact driving them towards groups that are committed to armed resistance by refusing to use nonviolent methods to end their suffering. We could easily do that, just cut off the weapons to this, this lunatic entity, but we keep providing it with the means to kill Palestinians. So what are they going to do? They end up gravitating naturally, rationally, to groups that are taking up arms against their oppressor because they see no other way to defend themselves. Right? Yes. But it's not about whether you or I support any particular group. If we adopted the attitude of people like Lazar and the Western governments and the US government towards Israel, this is what we would say to them. We would say to them, the Likud party is guilty of every crime against humanity known to the human race. And it's currently governing Israel and committing a genocide in Palestine. Every single one of its leaders is a murderous psychopath. We forbid you from allowing Likud to run. We forbid you for leaders or members to stand for office in any capacity. We will not tolerate a Likud government, nor will we tolerate any of those other parties that are a member of Netanyahu's psychopathic coalition running for political office. Do you hear anybody in the West saying that? Jamaro, do you hear Mr. Lazar saying that? We take it upon ourselves to tell the victims of genocide who can and cannot be their leaders, but the perpetrators of the genocide are perfectly free to keep re-electing these mass murderers. That's disgusting.
Dimitri, you have my full, absolute, complete, unabridged agreement on all of this. You have laid your case out in magnificent fashion. I would imagine you were a fantastic lawyer, the way that you're making your points. And just so happen, the facts, just so happy to be on your side on this. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And the data backs it up. So I will arrange this debate. I was laughing after the fact, because when somebody is like, people like that never want to debate, and very strong about it. And it's like, but you don't know him. Like, you don't know anything about that guy. And you just got a point of view. That's it, right? How are you being this strong about something like that? And it's like, be careful what you wish for.
Typical Zionist arrogance. That's all I can say. The arrogance
you're going to be put through perdition.
I may sound a little arrogant myself tomorrow, but at this stage, I'm not so sure he's going to keep his commitment to debate me. But I hope I'm wrong. I
think he will.
Good. I would be happy as hell for that to happen. I think your audience and all the people who listen to us debate, I think will learn something from the experience.
Well, that's what I hope. That's my hope. That's my fervent hope. I don't like mean-spirited back and forth. I do like what you just did, elucidating reality. This is what's true. It's not about, nobody has petitioned their way to freedom, right? I beseech you. I give you a strongly worded letter. Please stop occupying me. Nobody does that. And I think I even pointed out in that interview, it was like, dude, when they go out and march, they are shot. In the last return marches, they were shot in the legs. Specifically in the knees, in the head, and in the stomach. They were targeting specific points in order to cripple or kill. That was a march. That was a peaceful march. It didn't work. It didn't matter. Dimitri, you're awesome.
Thank you, awesome. You too. Thank you.
I will do my best to arrange this for next week. I'll see if he's still on board and he wants to do it. He may want to change the specific topic, but we'll see. He seemed to be in for it. He seemed to be wanting to have that conversation. So
great.
I'm open to having it. And I'm glad that you're willing to have it. As I said, be careful what you wish for, and talk about him on this. You're awesome, man. Dimitri Lascaris, Reason to Resist, lawyer. I want to say journalist because you actually do damn good work, but lawyer, journalist, activist, Montreal, Quebec. Reason to Resist on YouTube. Definitely check Dimitri out. This is a morsel of goodness, like a tiny crumb of goodness for Dimitri. So definitely check out his channel. Dimitri, you be safe, man, and I'll hit you back. I'll make plans and I'll make arrangements. Have a good one, man.
Thank you for doing that. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was very energetic, very refreshing. Feel like I had a shower. That's great. Dimitri is awesome. Daniel seemed to be on board for this back and forth, this quote unquote debate. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. So I will try to make that work for next week. I'll try to arrange it. By the way, Ajamo Baraka is going to be on next week. I reached out to him. He seemed to be very enthused about me reaching out to him, which enthused me. Look, from my point of view, I just run a YouTube channel. And there's some people who I reach out to that I've followed for a very long time. And so even though I know all of these people are just people, it still is a pleasant surprise when somebody actually wants to come on the show. My assumption is that I am disliked. I assume that. I wear it like armor. So if the person doesn't want to come on, oh well, when all of you have left me, I will make it on my own. That's the way I perceive it. That's the way I look at it. This is kind of a childhood thing where you're just kind of dealing with stupid kids and whatnot. My point is, I'm always enamored when somebody I do actually follow and follow their career, especially over several years, seems to be enthused about coming on. He was like, dude, I can't believe you've taken this long to hit me up. It's like, whoa, okay, fair enough. Let's do this next week. So hopefully he'll be on next week. I'm trying to get him to come on for Monday. I'm trying to think who else. I hope Vanessa Beeley will come back on. She was a last minute guest. And so the schedule for today was very packed, which is the reason why initially I had it for 30. I hit Esaban, asked him if I could stay another 15. 45 minutes was not enough for that conversation with Vanessa. I am bothered by that conversation. But Vanessa is in that area. She lived in that area for God knows how long. Ever since I've known her, she's lived in Syria. I don't take what she says very seriously. I'll put it that way. Same thing with Laith. He's a guest on the show. I don't buy the position that Russia turned around and murdered Syrians. That's too far for me. But obviously, there's a perspective in the region that Russia abandoned its friends, and that is problematic. If you're trying to make friends, that's very problematic. Oh, we have chats. Let's go to chats. Let's go to chats. Wait, what is this? What is this? Cherie. By the way, Jamal, has my little sparrow flown to you yet with a note in her beak? I don't know what that means. Cherie, please send me an email. I don't know what that means. If you need to be incognito about it. Mysterious. Mysterious is sexy, but I don't know what that means. Just send me an email and I'll understand. Let's go to the chats. This is Jakarta, I think. Russia is in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Yes, they are. So Russia had their African unit. In fact, Wagner. I don't remember if they've reconstituted Wagner. Have you received my messages? I have not received a message. Just send an email. I get my emails. But yes, they're there now, helping maintain security for the Sahel states, because you can imagine Traore, his life is under threat, to put it mildly. There is something that's open. Let me kill all of these. I'm hearing something in the background. There it is. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing explosions. All right. Let's go to these. Oh, and we need to hit Russia before we close. Otherwise, the video title is going to be off. Come on. What the hell? There we are. Derek, much appreciation for the t-shirt query. No worries. Keep us updated on the shipping details. You give the Laith. Yes. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, man. You're doing a sterling job. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So the t-shirt thing. So when YouTubers want to do t-shirts, and I guess not YouTubers, it could be pretty much anybody. There are companies that would automatically create the t-shirt and mail the t-shirt. Now, I know what Laith is talking about. He's saying he's in Lebanon, so that will be a pain in the ass to try to get that thing mailed, and it would be expensive. But those t-shirt companies will most likely be in the United States. And so, depending upon where his base of support is, it could be mailed out in those terms. I don't know if they mail outside the country. They may. But the people who are asking for the t-shirt are outside the country. And if I'm not mistaken, he said most of the people that watch him are outside the country, meaning in the States or Canada or somewhere like that. So I will, I need to do my own t-shirt. I've got one made. I've got one sent to my mama. She's going to have to send it to me when I go to my new location. And you guys will be able to see that. And you guys will be able to get that if that's something that you guys want. And so I will just put him in contact with a similar company that does that. That way he doesn't have to build it himself. You make it once, and the company will automatically ship it out. Let's see, who's the next one? Dr. Susan Jacob. Russia and Israel killed Assad and pretended to take him to Russia. No proof of life except a 1950-style forged letter. Oh, that is deeply cynical. That is deeply cynical. I don't even think Laith even went with that point of view. And I don't even think Vanessa goes with that point of view. From my understanding, he's in Syria. I've seen nothing to indicate that he's dead. You're making a ham sandwich on the moon argument. Basically, how do I know there's not a ham sandwich on the moon? Well, I can't. I've never been to the moon, so I don't necessarily know if there's a ham sandwich there, but I need to have some kind of evidence to indicate that there is a ham sandwich there. I'm saying that's kind of the side thing. We don't, in absence of evidence, is not indicative of something being true. I hope you get my point. So I am going to give the benefit of the doubt and say he's in Russia. I don't have any reason to believe otherwise. But I appreciate you, Dr. Susan Jacob. But that's hardcore. That is very hardcore. We love you, Dimitri. You're intelligent, principled, and correct in your analysis. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Dimitri came with facts. Deborah Wilson, fantastic guest, Jamal. What a show today. Well, thank you, Deborah Wilson. I appreciate that. I do my damnedest. When we used to play chess, the guy used to say, I'm doing what the hen do, the best I can do. No, it was a pretty good show today. Sometimes you never know when you're going into these things, but it was a good show. Laith, passionate, great guest, breaks that stuff down, gives us amazing perspective. I always learn something in having a conversation with him. Vanessa Beeley, journalist. She's been living in this area for God knows how long. Was in the war as Syria was collapsing. So yeah, you kind of have to take her word seriously on this. She has been an investigative journalist for years. Shout out to her. I think she hated me during COVID. I was a hard ass during COVID, so I think she hated my guts. But it's great to touch base with her and talk to her again. And of course, Dimitri and Esaban. Ecuador has a soft spot for me. I went to Quito back in, it's like 2014, 2015. Beautiful country. Oh God, beautiful country. It kills me to hear that this is taking place. So there's that. And of course, Dimitri setting the record straight. I need to figure out what to name that video. But spitting facts. So yeah, it was a good show. It was a really good show. We have one more. I want a Tim Black Steel Tepper t-shirt. You may get that t-shirt. Tim Black has been saying shit or has said shit that I haven't appreciated. He has been making shit up like nobody's business. That if I was doing my show at the time, I would have put a knife in him. I've met Tim Black all of one time. Just once. We were at what I think it was called the People Summit. There's a picture that I have with Jimmy Dore, and Tim Black was moseying around. In many respects, I got to be honest with you. Some of these people, they thought too highly of themselves. Tim Black is one of those people. Don't mean no offense. It's just my point of view. He can have whatever point of view he wants of me. I don't give a shit. He went on an interview and said something to the effect that I was looking at his wife or something. Are you out your fucking mind? Are you out your fucking mind? Dude, let's be blunt. You went on an interview with Sam Cedar and got manhandled. He treated you like a bitch. That's what Sam Cedar did. It was humiliating. It was embarrassing. It was quite possibly one of the worst debate performances I've ever seen in my life. At the time, Tim Black allowed me to come on his show, I think twice, to do a secondary show. It's almost like if I say, hey, I'll let you do a show on my show. Twice. It never got really good reviews. It never got really good ratings because even though Tim Black has a lot of subs, his shows are not stellar, if that makes sense. Meaning he doesn't get a huge amount of views, even though he has a lot of subs. So it's not like you're driving a huge amount of traffic, even if you come on the show. That being said, I still felt some level of loyalty to Tim Black. And of course, when somebody in your circle goes on and get manhandled and trampled in such a way, just like a gorilla beating a baby, Sam Cedar in this case being the gorilla, you have to respond. You have to say something about it. And you want to back your guy up, right? You want to back your guy. The strongest position I could take is Black was a bit tepid in that debate. I thought that was a perfectly okay description, right? I thought that, well, obviously he knows he got manhandled. rational human being has to know that you are being put under pressure and being put through perdition in a debate in such a way. Apparently, he didn't know that. And me saying the performance was tepid, which I thought was the most glorious point of view that I could give to it, he took offense. He goes on his show and goes on, if I remember correctly, a 30, 45-minute rant. And when I mean rant, I mean hysterical rant, where you have a grown man screaming at the top of his lungs, I am not fucking tepid. I couldn't even be mad at him. I thought it was funny, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. I'm not fucking tepid. It's like, okay. Okay. Saying it a bit strong, bro. You've been a bit strong at that point. So yes, I will get that t-shirt. I will get that I'm not fucking tepid t-shirt. Yeah, that shit was weird. That shit was very weird. Yes, that is the t-shirt that I got. Good coffee. I think I said, damn, this is some hot coffee. I think that's the name of the t-shirt or something like that. I'm not fucking tepid. That's what he said. He said, I'm not fucking tepid. He went on a rant. He went on a tear. That shit was hilarious. My response to that was, I thanked Tim Black for the opportunity of being on the show. I was very gracious. What else do you do, right? What else do you do? Not fucking tepid. I'm not tepid. Like, he's losing it. He's losing it. They say you never go full retarded. Never go full retarded. Never go full retarded. Yeah. Good times. Good times. That shit was wild. That was wild. Absolutely wild. Galloway's a hat due to scarring from near lethal attack by rabid Zion Nazis. Wow. Who was immediately given haven in Israel. That is amazing. That is amazing. I just wear a hat because I just like to wear fedoras. I was in Puerto Rico. That was my first fedora, and it felt natural. Felt like I was missing something. Also, if I'm being bluntly honest, I think that part of it creates a separation between the audience and self. It's kind of like an ascendant in astrology. There's by having something even trivial, it creates a distinction between you as an individual versus the medium. I don't know. It's hard to explain. There's a psychological feature into it. But if you saw me on the street, you would see me in a fedora, or if you would see me in a skull cap. So who the fuck knows? Either way, I just like them. I think it goes well. What's the name of the movie Chris Rock played? The novelist's brother was already one. It was about the funeral of the father's death. And he found out the father was gay. I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what that movie is. I got to be honest with you. Chris Rock does funny comedy segments, like when he's doing stand-up. His movies suck. So I don't know. That sounds funny though. Yeah, we're sick still, trying to forget Chris Rock, Pookie in New Jack City. Yeah, that's a rough sick. Some of these characters are just rough, right? My mom hates, what is his name? He played in Color Purple, the one that beat Whoopi Goldberg. My mom hates him to this day. Hates his guts. And she hates his guts because from her point of view, he played that role too well. And that if you could beat Whoopi Goldberg like that in real life, like in that movie, and you're playing that role too well, then maybe you're like that in person. She hates his guts. Until you do right by me. Danny Glover, thank you. Danny Glover. She hates his guts to this day for that role. She was like, he ain't have to play that role that well. He have to play it that well. Until you do right by me. Yeah, he really sold that. Yeah, yes, he did. He played that role far too well. And then Oprah Winfrey getting beat. Oh, that is rough to watch. God, man, that movie is rough to watch. My mom hated Lawrence Fishburne. Oh, why? Because he played, Ike Turner. Yeah. Yeah, that was another one that was played too well. Played too well. What's love got to do with it? What's love got to do with it? Yep. But when Tina turned around and whipped his ass in that limo, whew, turn of the worm. Turn of the worm. Yeah, that's a rough one. Yeah, some of those movies are rough. Alex Walker noted that Spielberg did that with the movie, and so did I. Oh, really? Oh, hated. Wait a minute. Alex Walker hated what Spielberg did with that movie, and so did I. But their performances was like, if you're an actor, isn't that what you want? Like, no bullshit. If you're an actor and you play a role so well, like you embody that role so well, that when people see you on the street, they throw stuff at you. You played that role too well, bro. Just letting you know that. Just letting you know that. Fishburne can play a bad guy very well too. He can, but I like Fishburne as Morpheus. I like Fishburne as Morpheus. Whitney Houston, what a voice. Her guy. You know what's wild about Whitney Houston? Everybody thought Bobby Brown was a bad influence on Whitney Houston. It sounds like Whitney Houston was a bad influence on Whitney Houston. It sounds like Bobby Brown wasn't the wild person in that relationship. It sounded like Whitney Houston was. They left out what was meaningful. That may be fair. That's fair, Cherie. That may be fair. Agreed. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, as an actor playing a role, and 40 years go by, and people still hate you because of that role, you did something right as an actor. Taking out the script, by the way. I'm just saying, as an acting thing. Same thing with Oprah Winfrey. To this day, I see her getting her ass kicked in that movie, and it is painful to watch. Yeah, it's just rough. Yeah, Danny Glover's a great actor. He is. I don't hate him. My mom hates him. Someone got her on drugs. I don't know who got her on drugs, but Jesus, that is fucking tragedy, right? See, to me, it's, and I know this is going to sound very stupid, so I accept this. A rock star dying of a drug overdose is better than Whitney Houston dying from drugs. I can't justify that position. It just feels that way. There's something life on the edge about the way a rock star lives. In the 80s sense of rock star, that we, you're going from city to city, you don't know what city you're in, you're having sex with 10 different women that night, you're beating back syphilis with injections from the doctor who comes to the set because, you have a show to do. You are coked up, drugged up, etc. And your life is a blur, 10, 15 years. That's assuming you make it out alive. It's not that I think that's cool. In reality, it sounds badass in conception. You giving it all to the craft. It's like you're suffering for your art in a way. Whitney Houston looked like she was just a drug addict. And I know the rock stars are drug addicts, but she looked bad. She looked bad. Who watches The View? Nobody. Well, I don't know. I'm not gonna say nobody. I don't watch The View. Will Smith, 6 Degrees of Separation. I don't remember that movie. Keep in mind, I like sci-fi stuff. I could get dragged into watching a drama or something like that, but I'd like my mind blown. More than likely than not. My ex, her and I used to do movie nights. And in movie night, she would choose a movie one night, I would choose a movie the other night, depending upon whose turn it is. There were movies that she chose that were great that I would have never watched. So I know that there's a list of stuff out there that I would love as a movie because it's either weird, strange, interesting, funny, or all of the above. But me finding it would be rough. God, man, there was this movie where it is even hard to explain the movie because it's so fucking weird. But it was so good because it was that weird. Where a guy meets another guy at school. One guy falls in love with this other guy. Like, I always will make the point of saying that love should have a degree of what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I'll kill everybody in this room for you. That type of love. You know, like I'll bleed for you and I would apologize. Like I'll stab myself for you. And I apologize to you for bleeding on your shirt after I stab myself for you. It should have a little bit of intensity associated with it. Otherwise, what's the point? There are degrees. There are levels of that, right? Where it's like, okay, you've crossed into a different sphere where it's no longer safe for me. Damon, Vampire Diaries, Damon and Elena should have a little bit of that. Like, there should be edge to it on some level. There should be fights. Otherwise, what's the point? You should care enough to fight. There should be this sense of loss or fear of loss. Those things should be a part of it. Otherwise, you know, you can have a cordial, you know, comfortable, safe relationship, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But edge feels different. Edge feels different. The way Damon loves Elena and the way Elena loved Damon, that's fucking awesome. He would have killed anybody for her. And I'm not saying in real life you should kill somebody for somebody else. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that's the energy that was coming off of that relationship. It was white hot in the way that it reverberated. This guy fell in love with a jock in college and loved him with an intensity that is breathtaking, that is kind of hard to even put into words. He gets invited to the family house, and all of these people are rich. He is dirt poor. And he proceeds to effectively kill the members of the family in various ways. When the jock died, when the football jock died, and they buried the guy, he was weeping. I mean, like weeping, like tears of blood, weeping at the death. And there's a scene where he goes to the graveyard and starts fucking the grave. That's what I mean. It's a weird movie. The movie was so weird. And you're sitting there like, what the fuck did you just choose? What are we watching? But it's so strange that you can't turn away, right? It's one of those movies. That's what I mean. Like, there are movies that are so strange just in their conception that it's just good. There's a scene in it when everybody dies. And he strips completely naked. Well, in fact, there's several good scenes. There's one scene where the sister is in the bathroom. She's about to take her life. And she's talking to him. And she's like, I watched you one day. And she said, when my brother died, you wept. Like you wept in a way I've never seen a human being cry over anything. Like a mother could lose her child, and you've outwept that mom who lost her child. She says, I love my brother. And I couldn't even cry for my brother like that. Like, I'm trying, like, this is the level of, the guy is somewhat of a sociopath, but a sociopath in a way where he is like that series You. He's kind of like that. She ends up taking her life. There's a scene in the movie where everybody in the family is dead. He's in the house. He strips down completely naked and goes dancing and singing through the house like it's some kind of theatrical show. And again, you're watching this like, what the fuck do you have me watching? What the fuck? That's it. Saltburn. God, I love my audience. Saltburn is the movie. Yes. Saltburn. That is the movie. Saltburn. That movie is weird. That movie is, it is so weird. It's good. It is so weird. It's good. Sasquatch Sunset. I haven't seen Sasquatch Sunset. At least I'm not aware of it. Been on movies for so long. Last movie I saw in the theater was Total Recall. That long ago. That long ago. That's unfortunate. And for it to be Total Recall, that is also unfortunate. Really? You like Total Recall? I thought it was okay. Black Mirror is one of the best series in the history of series. There's never been a series better than Black Mirror. It is Twilight Zone for a new era, and it does it astonishingly well. It does it astonishingly well. Yes, Black Mirror. I live. Black Mirror is just other level. It's other level. God, it's other level. It's disturbing, but you must understand it's disturbing because I don't know if you've seen Black Mirror. Black Mirror is an anthology series, but it's near history or near future. So think like you can look at your present day reality and you can conceive of the items that are in Black Mirror, which makes it just makes it very disturbing. It's like, all right, we have this bit of technology that's out. This technology is close to what we already have. What does it look like in real life? Play it out. That's Black Mirror. It's disturbing. It's so disturbing. Man, they charge so much for popcorn in the movie theaters. So the last movie I've seen was Superman. I think I went in Malaysia to watch Superman. It was good. They did Superman good. They did him good. I'm one of those people that don't like to see Superman get beat up. I feel like it's killing a mockingbird. It's a good man that is good through and through. And so, yeah, despite the muscles, despite the ability to use force, despite all of that stuff, that at his core, he's just a good man. And they put Superman in this position for the first time. Well, second time, but the first time they didn't bang it in. Like when Superman took all the nuclear weapons and threw them off the planet. Okay, that's a big fucking deal. But they didn't make that a big deal. They made it like, oh, well, Superman took the nukes. It's like Superman has just declared just became emperor of the world. If you're taking the planet's nukes, you are blowing off governments. When you are doing that, you're effectively saying, I don't give a shit what your government thinks. This is what I'm doing. This Superman was a little bit different. Israel hated this movie. Israel hated this movie because it came across as if basically an allegory for Israel murdering Palestinians. And Superman gets involved, effectively saying, you're not going to be allowed to do this. And it creating this kind of political uproar in various parts of the world, because if Superman can unilaterally go into a country and say, fuck off, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Now, it was really good. It was really good. Oh, I disagree. Superman was hyper trash. What? He was getting beat up and crying the whole time. Look, again, I do not like Superman getting beat up. I do not like Superman getting beat up. But to be fair, Superman was getting beat up by Superman. Let's be honest, right? If you have Superman versus Superman in a power suit, then Superman without the power suit is going to get his ass kicked. That was the first time Superman had ever got his ass kicked, apparently, up to that point. So, dealing with failure is not easy. And I don't remember him crying in that movie. He just got his ass kicked. I don't remember him crying. I mean, he was crying. He wasn't crying. Bizarre Superman movie now. It was good. It was actually good. It was good. I even liked the dog. I even liked the dog. Politicians was mocking Netanyahu. Yes. That's why Israel hated it. It was like, oh my God. They're using a Superman movie to talk about how we're murdering Palestinians. Yeah. All right. We are talking movies, and God, man, at some point we probably need to do a movie show or book show. Invincible. Yes. Invincible is fantastic. Invincible is an awesome series. Awesome series. I haven't watched the last two. I think it was the last season. I haven't watched the last season yet, but I know I've read all of the comic books, so I know what happens in the comic books. It's so good. Like the first season where Omni-Man beats the shit out of Mark, like beats Mark to within an inch of his life. And he is like screaming at him as a dad. And he's like, Mark, do you get it? And he points out to him, dude, all of these people will die. Every last person on this earth will die, and you will still be here. Your life is going to be in the thousands. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? And he says, what are you going to have when everybody dies? And Mark missing teeth, his face, the bones in his face crushed, his body just mangled. And he's like, I still have you, Dad. And it kills him. It kills what's his name. Like, that is so good. That is so good. There's another really good scene in that where, what is his name? Oh, what is this? Conquest. When Conquest comes to the planet. And Conquest is hovering over Mark. And he's effectively saying, look, I'm about to take this world. And I forget what just happened to Mark, but Mark is pissed. And Mark is like, you have picked the wrong day to fuck with me. And they have this epic fight. When I say epic, I mean epic. Conquest gets the best of Mark. Conquest is about to murder Mark. He's about to kill him. And in the moment before he murders Mark, he leans in and says, sometimes I cry alone at night. And then he points out, he says, they don't even give me a name. They give me a mission. Now, this is profound. This is profound. I know some people might have found it funny. I found it profound. Conquest is expected to play a particular role. His entire society sees him in that model. That is what he is supposed to be. That is what he has to be in regards to who he is as a person, as an entity in his society. And so, but just because that's his appearance doesn't mean he doesn't have thoughts, right? It's like, yeah, he's a brute, but he has thoughts. He has tender thoughts that he can only keep to himself. And in this moment, as he's about to kill Mark, he feels the need to purge because you're about to take this to your grave, bro. I can talk to you. I can tell you anything. I can empty my feelings into you. And it will make me feel better because I get to talk to another human being. But you're taking this to your grave. I found that profound. He's like, sometimes I cry at night. They don't even give me a name. They give me an objective, a mission. Invincible is so good. Invincible is just so good. It's just so good. It's just so good. I love the old Ghostbusters, even if it's just for the songs. Ghostbusters was good. I remember it as a kid. I don't think it aged well, but it was good. Romanticize drugs. What? We romanticize drug use, that's why? Oh, you mean for the rock star thing? Maybe. I don't think it's a drug use. I think it's a lifestyle, if I'm being blunt. Karen. I think it's the lifestyle. Like, these guys are living on the edge. And not just on the edge in regards to the music or the lifestyle, in regards to the women that they're sleeping with, but also even highs that they're going through, trashing hotels. Like, they're unwieldy. You have a society that is stuck with rules, regulations, formality. You have to be at work. You have the time set that you have to be at work. Even if you're married, you're stuck with one particular person in the context of that marriage. All of these things are structured. Your life is structured. And you look at these guys and they're living on the edge. It's like, there's no structure in that. You got to make their performances because they got to make enough money. But even in the context of the performances, they're drugged up on stage, or used to be sometimes. They're trashing hotels. They're jet setting around the world. They are hooking up with these random groupies that are at the scenes. You know, sexual venereal diseases be damned. No, in reality, that is not a good life. That is not what people strive for. Agreed. But in concept, there is a, or at the very least, there used to be. I don't call it idealization of it, but there used to be this view of it. I don't think it was just the drugs. I think it was a lifestyle. Again, I could be wrong. You could be totally right. You could be totally right. He called Russia an unreliable partner. He's a moron to say that they murdered people. Even Jamal agrees with me. Yeah, I don't think that they murdered. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. That's too strong. Like, if you want to make the argument that Russia's an unreliable partner, if you are in Lebanon, if you are in Iran, if you are in the Middle East, you may feel that way. You may feel that way. How can you say they're wrong? How can you say their feelings in this case wrong, right? You can say you disagree with it. You can make arguments as to why you disagree with it. But clearly they feel abandoned. Is what it is. Respect their take. If you go from that to, oh, by the way, and Russia's murdered Syrians on their way out, okay, you lost me. You lost me, right? Like, at that point, you lost me. That's so extreme. That's so extreme. Laith did speak to the generals that were on the ground in Syria. But from my point of view, everybody, have you ever read Albert Speer's memoirs? He was the German, I don't know what you want to call him, architect. Albert Speer gave a self-serving narration in that book. Any book that you read where somebody is talking about something that went wrong, that was a part of their government, that was a part of something that took place, they often lie. They lie because they want to be remembered in posterity, or posterity in a particular way. And they don't want to take responsibility for failures. Let's be very clear on the Syria front. It was the United States, it was Turkey, it was the Gulf states that have preyed upon and decimated that country for decades. It's not a factor that Syria fell on its own. Left to its own devices, Syria would have been fine. It is the attacks against it that ended Syria. I want to be very clear. That needs to be nailed down. In the context of those attacks, people who were fighting, if indeed people were paid off, if indeed some of the generals were paid off, and if indeed people laid down their arms, it is not shocking to me to get a narrative about how they did everything right and the Iranians and the Russians fucked up, any more than it is to get a narrative from the Russians that the Syrians fucked up, or the Iranians that the Russians and the Syrians fucked up. I expect people to get their takes, and those takes are probably going to be conflicting on some level because a lot of complicated shit is happening. But obviously, I respect the points of view of my guests when they're explaining it, especially considering what they were, the sentiment on the ground. So, yeah. All right. I actually had to, I don't know what FFW is. I don't know what that means. Absolutely hate Sigourney Weaver. Don't know what it is about her, probably just her annoying face. I don't hate her, but I don't like any of her movies. I wasn't even a big fan of Alien, to be honest. Yeah. All right. I'm going to end this because we are just talking about movies at this point. Oh, for what it's worth. Ah, thank you. Thank you for what it's worth. Yeah, Aliens. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Aliens. It didn't do it for me. It just didn't do it for me. I couldn't get into it. Maybe it was because I was a kid. And it was very dark as a kid. I have to probably rewatch it. What did Sigourney Weaver do? She didn't do anything, President Jafar. She did nothing. She did nothing. She did nothing. She's a hard ass in that movie. Yeah, she's a badass in that movie. She is a total badass in that movie. Actually, you know what? There's, oh man, what is the movie called? There's a movie that Sigourney Weaver played in that is great. Her role in it is great. But she's older and she's playing like a professor that is being interrogated. And she's an asshole, which makes it funny. It makes it so good because she's such a dick in that movie. But it works. And she's like a dick in a way that she doesn't acknowledge. Like, she's being so arrogant in that movie that it makes it funny in the way that she's engaging with the person that she's talking to. She did something wrong. She did some kind of surgery that she wasn't supposed to do. And she's talking about how she's a genius. All of these people are just against my genius. And the guy would say something. She was like, well, obviously I knew that. And obviously, you know, your situation is so-and-so because I'm a fucking genius and you're an idiot. It is so good. It is so good. I do not know what that movie is, but it's so good. It is funny as all hell. That is the one movie I've seen her in that was really good. There's another movie, like kind of a movie. It was dealing with aliens again, but it wasn't aliens. It was, she's had her good moments. Thinking back, she's had her good moments. Working Girls. That was the one about prostitutes, right? That was the one about hookers. Alien Life series is amazing. Like watching a 1 hour long movie. Ghostbusters Galaxy Quest. No, Tim Allen didn't do it for me. Ice Storm was okay as a B flick. She was a douche in Working Girls. No, I'm not. No, it's a different movie than Working Girls. She was playing a scientist in this one. Love Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott is good. His movies are fantastic. Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Blade Runner is another one I liked. Even the new one that they came out with, I thought that was good too. It's very, the atmosphere in the movie is heavy. All right. Let's call it a day. I want to thank all of you that donated to the show. I want to thank all of you that watched. I want to thank all of you that liked and shared the videos. We still have 630 people here, which is amazing. Just fucking around. It is not the recent Star Trek. Galaxy Quest is not the recent Star Trek. Those things are not the same. I'm insulted that you would even make that allegory. Deeply insulted. Deeply insulted. Fassbender is awesome. He is a damn good actor. Agreed. He is a damn good actor. Susan Sarandon. Meh. Never really did it for me. All right, guys. You all have a fantastic rest of your day or rest of your night, depending upon where you are. It is Friday. I need to get my visa and I need to book my trip. You guys are a fantastic audience. You have my deepest appreciation and thanks for being here. I will see you all Monday morning, maybe Sunday. There's a gentleman, Mina Uncensored, who does Middle Eastern politics. He's great at it. He is, I think I saw him hit me up asking about Sunday, so we may do Sunday show. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one all. Be safe. And be kind to the degree that you can be kind. And yes, I'll put constraints on it. Don't be a doormat. Have a good one all.